right, thank you. Apologize for being a few minutes late, but we have a matter of business that we need to call to order a special meeting of the Arvada Housing Authority today, June 27th, 2022. Ms. Resch, could you do the roll call?
Chairman Williams.
Here.
Chairman Pro Tem Jones.
Here.
Commissioner Pfeiffer.
Here.
Commissioner Marriott.
Here.
Commissioner Mormon.
Here.
Commissioner Simpson.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Thank you very much. All are present and accounted for. With Mayor Williams is joining us remote tonight, but he has asked me to run the Housing Authority meeting tonight. So I'd like to call, or actually, before I do that, is there any public comment for this particular portion of the meeting? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment portion. Oh. Just for housing. Yeah, sorry. We'll get to the other meeting. Thank you. So we'll call to the podium Carrie Espinoza for some new business. And actually, I guess I'll read. This is the R-HA-22-03, a resolution authorizing the Arvada Housing Authority to enter into a special limited partnership agreement and housing assistance payment contract for the Vance Street Flats development. Ms. Espinoza.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. This agenda item is regarding Vance Street Flats, which is a tax credit approved affordable housing development that will provide 50 units of workforce housing located at 5854 Vance Street. Vance Street Flats was awarded low-income housing tax credits in 2021 for the financing of this project. In support of their tax credit application, the Arvada Housing Authority agreed to become a special limited partner in the project for purposes of providing a property and sales tax exemption. The Housing Authority also agreed to assign 7 Housing Choice vouchers with a preference that the vouchers are used for people experiencing homelessness. Services for these vouchers will be provided by the Arvada Homeless Navigation Program. Vance Street Flats is scheduled to close on this deal in mid-July and must provide an executed special limited partner agreement and an agreement to enter into a housing assistance payments contract as part of their documentation. Josh Russell with Medici Consulting Group, I believe, is available to assist with any questions that you might have, but if there are no questions, the team recommends approval of the resolution authorizing the Housing Authority to enter into a special limited partnership agreement and an agreement to enter into a housing assistance payments contract for the Vance Street Flats development.
Thank you. So obviously we need to take action on this. So do I have any member of council questions or action? Mr. Pfeiffer.
If there's no any questions, I'll make the motion.
I see no questions. Go ahead and make your motion.
I move that RHA 22-03, a resolution authorizing the Arvada Housing Authority to enter into a special limited partnership agreement and a housing assistance payment contract for the Vance Street Flats development be approved.
Motions for approval. Ms. Simpson. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and display the votes. Mr. Mayor, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
So that passes 7-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we will now adjourn the special meeting for the Arvada Housing Authority. All right, now I will call to order the Arvada City Council meeting for June 27th, 2022. And this time I'll call on Mr. Marriott for a moment of silent reflection and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you. If you'll please join me in a moment of silent reflection. And now the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mr. Marriott. And now, Ms. Resta, roll call.
Mayor Williams.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Jones.
Here.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Here.
Councilmember Marriott.
Yes, here.
Councilmember Mormon.
Here.
Councilmember Simpson.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Thank you very much. And as indicated in our previous meeting, the mayor is joining us remotely and is here for the entirety, but has asked me to run this meeting for him tonight. So presented are the minutes of the City Council business meeting dated June 6, 2022. Are there any changes or corrections? Seeing none, those minutes will stand as presented. There are no recognitions or communications or presentations, so we'll move into our first public comment portion of our meeting. And now this is an opportunity for you to speak on those items that are not on the agenda tonight. If you have something else that you'd wish to speak to, there will be an opportunity for you to speak to those things that are on the agenda as we get into that section. There's a limit of 3 minutes per person, and it's your opportunity to address your city council. So I have several here and a few on Zoom. So when I call your name, if you just come down to the podium. Nathan, I'm not going to pronounce your last name right. Starts with a C, Chamberlain. Come on down.
All right, thanks for having me here tonight and allowing me to talk. As an Arvada resident and as a Jeffco school counselor, I can tell you there's no time like the present to have meaningful dialogue around racial justice solutions here in Arvada. During the last 10 years, I have watched the obvious inequities that exist between our students merely because of the color of their skin. And I say our because I believe our kids are ours. The city has previously stated they would invite the community to participate in dialogue about racial justice solutions for Arvada. We have been waiting for 2 years for meaningful dialogue. When will this happen? We're asking the city to move forward with their own self-imposed past due timeline, and that staff provide the council with the data on other cities, counties, and jurisdictions that have already done this work. Other cities are doing this. Let's see what they have to offer. I believe everyone here tonight wants all Arvadans to succeed. When will we start showing that? Thank you.
Thank you. Whitney Leeds. Thank you. Come on down.
Good evening. Looking around at the staff, at the city councilors, even at the gallery, you might notice there are almost no people of color in this room, and that's not an accident. The city is neither welcoming nor safe to people of color. And even if no one in here made a racist comment, even if no one in here ever supported a racist policy, the very makeup of this room right now is itself a testimony to the need for a diversity, equity, and inclusivity task force. But we know that's not true. In fact, many of us had to listen at the last city council meeting to racist comments and problematic comments by our own city councilors. And we were promised that our city council would look into these other jurisdictions that we know our neighbors just in Wheat Ridge, among many others, have taken action to self-police in the areas of diversity, equity, and inclusivity. And yet here we are at another city council meeting without any answers, 2 years after we began this work. And actually more than 2 years, because I know that some of you have been here even longer fighting harder. So I'm asking you to end the lip service. We don't need any more lip service. We know that this is necessary. Just take a look at this room.
Thank you. And do we have somebody running the clock, the timer for 3 minutes? I'm not seeing it, so I don't know when. Thank you very much. All right. Next up, Amy Travin, followed by Gary Schofield. So just so you know, you're on deck.
Good evening. My name is Amy, and I am a resident of Arvada. It is nice to see you all this evening. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to speak to you. So I'm here today because I care about the city moving forward with diversity, equity, and inclusive work. But I have a few questions for you before I begin. You know, the question is generally, who do you care about in the community and in our city? Do you care about everybody who lives here? Literally every individual? And if there is evidence that that's not happening, that we're not caring about every individual who lives in our community, and that you are not serving everyone in the community, why are you so afraid to start providing services to them? Why are you so afraid to just take a look? What are you not doing that we could be doing? Because during the study session that you held on May 10th, there were questions about whether or not that DEI work is essential for us here in the city of Arvada. And I think quite clearly the answer is yes. And I say yes for a couple of reasons. And I would like to thank you for taking that time on May 10th to have that study session. That probably wasn't easy to have that type of conversation in such a public forum. And so I applaud you for that. I also ask that you start acting, not just having the conversation. And so I heard a few things in this session that I believe require a response on my part and an action on your part. First, you asked, was there even a problem in the city? And I think the response is quite clearly yes, that you even answered for yourselves. You even questioned yourselves when we were having this meeting, is it being closed caption in same time as we're doing the meeting so that individuals who are hard of hearing can know what is happening? But the answer was no, it wasn't being closed caption. But a DEI expert and consultant not only can find these small things that we're not doing, but much larger things that we all need to be doing to make the community better for everyone. Second, in asking yourselves not only is there a problem in the city, and whether or not there are individuals who have been marginalized historically here in Arvada that are experiencing oppression, the answer is yes, because you yourselves already held a forum 2 years ago where an individual came and had people answer questions. Are you experiencing marginalization or oppression? And citizens in Arvada said yes. That was 2 years ago. And so for this, and because I only have 12 seconds left, I'm asking that you move forward with your own self-imposed deadline of having the city staff present you with information from other jurisdictions that show that this work is needed even here in Arvada. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Gary Schofield, followed by Daniel Mondragon.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to tell you my opinion on this DIE or EI system and what's going on, but I've done that. I've got a letter for public comment, and I've told you that I really don't believe it happens here in Arvada. That's one of the reasons I'm speaking tonight, because the divisions I see in the city of Arvada are between residents of different political sides. A couple of months ago, I was talking to Don Wick about an issue, an ADA issue in my neighborhood. And we've come to a resolution, and we are fixing that, and everything's in work. And congratulations, thank you, Don, and all your hard work and the school district for putting in. I myself am almost a 40-year Colorado educator at all levels of education, 16 through K. I worked in Commerce City for 10 years. I will tell you that, no, Arvada is not as racially diverse as even Westminster or Wheat Ridge. Do we marginalize people? No. I think the City Council has done an excellent job in taking care of everyone's needs, just as I just mentioned with Don. Everybody is very responsive. Randy, my new city councilman, put this ADA thing into motion for me, and it was solved within a matter of hours, even though I've been working on the entrance to Oberon Middle School for over 13, 14 years. I don't believe it's safe, it's a traffic issue, and it's a problem, and that's why I want to talk to you about this division. I was having a discussion these 2 months ago with my neighbor, who I had never met, who lived in her house for 35 years plus. I have lived in my house for 16 years. We're both right there at Oberon's entrance, and we both have issues with the students hanging out in her front yard and ripping up her grass every day. And we've had a lot of help, and our resource officers are trying to take care of that. But it was real funny that after a few minutes of conversation, she looked at me and said, "Oh, you're from the oppositional side." I am not from the oppositional side. I am an Arvada resident, a Colorado resident next, and an American. I believe in our country, and I believe in what you and all have been doing on our city council. I want to compliment you on what you've been doing, how you've been considering issues, and the time and efforts that you all put in for us on your own and what you're doing here tonight for us. So thank you all very much, and thank you for giving us these excellent employees we have in the city that do take care of issues very, very quickly. And thank you, Mark Devon, for your management there.
Thank you. Daniel? Oh, thank you. Followed by, I'm sorry, Rodriguez? His last name? I can't read your writing. We'll get to it. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Mondragon. I am a 40-year resident of Arvada. I am glad to be here tonight for this gathering on this land that was traversed by the Ute, the Arapaho, the Cheyenne, and other native nations before they were dispossessed. I am a member of Christ the King Episcopal Church and of Arvadans for Social Justice. I come tonight urging you to continue the work that the city has been doing to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in the city. I thank you for the internal work. I thank Mark Devon for the internal work that the staff has been doing. And I applaud the impetus that was felt in the murder of George Floyd to engage with the community. Community has been waiting, as been noted, for 2 years for next steps, for the creation of a task force, for meaningful dialogue, not just opportunity for us to make comment and then no dialogue happening. We can work together, staff, leadership, and community, to ensure that the Arvada of tomorrow is welcoming, safe, and inclusive for all. How will this be done? That is for the task force to come up with as a democratic process, not for me to say. I would offer a thought about the importance of language. Would it be important for us to look at language in policies, procedures, to make sure that there are no remnants of past times that were discriminatory to people that came before us? I note, by example, the U.S. Constitution, there are some 52, I believe it is, male pronoun usage, no female at all in the U.S. Constitution. Do we now think, oh, well, it was truly meant for everyone? Was it? Or was it meant for a few white, land-owning males? It is time for us in our documents here to look at incidents of exclusion and look for opportunities for inclusion. I am grateful for the city's funding of a nonprofit I am with, and in that application there's a request for demographic information, and the way that I was asked to put down what are the demographics of the people we serve was old and can be updated. That's just one example of how we can look at everything within the city. I applaud you for your desire to provide services equitably to everyone in Arvada. Thank you. And I encourage your leadership. There are evidence across the country of underlying forces that would divide us. And we need to stay strong together and say, we will not let that happen in Arvada. If anyone is put down because of their race, who they love, their gender, we will not stand for it. And as our leaders, our elected leaders, you are at the top of the hill saying we will not let that happen here. Thank you for your service to our community.
Thank you. I believe it's Morgan. Sorry, Morgan.
That's all right. Celtic Welsh last name of Richards.
Richards. Okay, I get it now.
Sorry for my handwriting.
That's okay.
My name is, thank you very much, City Council. My name is Morgan Richards. I live in Wheat Ridge, and I'm the founder for Wheat Ridge for Equity. And I'm here tonight to ask you to join Wheat Ridge in doing the work that is hard and uncomfortable. From the time we started demonstrating after George Floyd's horrific murder on a sidewalk street, we were able to have our city council create a race and equity task force. You're on a different path that I actually think is better. You have the money to fund a DEI consultant, whereas our community members are starting that work to go through and examine every department, every policy for racism and bigotry that intentionally harms and ignores LGBTQ and BIPOC people and people of other differences. This is important work. We cannot shy away from this because all of us in Jeffco have got to reconcile our shared history. Our county was settled by a lot of people that ended up being heavily involved with the KKK. This is not news. This is well documented. The house right next to me in Wheat Ridge had a fairly high-ranking member of the KKK. What do you think he thinks that my black children live in the house next to him? I'll tell you what he thinks. All of our communities have things written into the original deed plats that often say a black person cannot be domiciled in this home unless they're a servant. They cannot be sold. Those homes cannot be sold to a black person. Think about that. It has not been long enough for us to continue to ignore the shared history. It's time to step up. And there's a benefit of this. Every person in the community, like me, who comes into Arvada and spent money today, can feel safe and welcome in this community and that they have the ability to thrive, which in the future can add to the rich diversity of the community as well as our economic vibrancy. So don't wait any longer, because things like George Floyd can happen here. It could be my child. It could be kids that I love and care about who live in Arvada. Thank you very much. Please proceed.
Thank you. Kia Ruiz? Ruiz, I'm sorry.
Hello, Mayor Williams at home and City Council. Thank you for having me here. So I'm going to come at this from a different lens about why I support the DEI work going through. I think one of the things that people are missing is what exactly is the DEI work? And so I serve the community here. I'm on your Sustainability and Advisory Committee. I'm also a member of the Community Emergency Response Team, so I actually get to spend a lot of time at the fire station, which is awesome. But with that, and what I've noticed in my time here, there were some very significant barriers. And this is what I'm going to get to with what can a consultant do in the scope of work you're doing. I can talk about how I don't spend my disposable income in Arvada. There are very few businesses I go to that I feel welcomed at. I got to be truthful about that. I have friends opening businesses. I actually turn them away from Arvada because of things that I have experienced here. That is the culture. That is not how city government operates. It's the policy and processes with how city government operates that I urge you to get the DEI consultant to examine and then work with the task force on. An example I'm going to give with ASAC. When I applied to be on the committee, it was like the start of the pandemic. I put in my application. I had so many barriers that came towards me that I wasn't sure, like, was this just really bad administrative work or is this something towards me? I wasn't sure of it. I wasn't only given like one time I can show up. It wasn't even asked a question. It's like, if you want to be interviewed, you have to be here right now. And it was a Zoom thing. The follow-up email sent to me, there was no identifiable information that it was for an ASAC meeting or anything else. It was essentially lost in my inbox. Luckily, I have partial photographic memory. That's how I remember who sent it, and I managed to find it before my interview. Other than that, I had no way of finding out when my interview was. When I actually went in for my interview on Zoom, I was never greeted. I was in the room for over 20 minutes, and this person was having these really beautiful bantering conversations with the other applicants, and I'm like, what is going on here? So I've asked people in ASAC, was this your experience? And we all kind of have variable experiences with that. A DEI consultant would essentially talk to everybody in all strata working with government to see what their experiences are, and I've done this with the Equity Project with the Denver Zoo. And generally, leadership is like, everything is fantastic, and then you find your guests and your volunteers are like, no, not so. So I did that process with them a few years ago, and now they're kind of revamping that so that it really is equitable. Another example is the word citizen. The city council loves to say citizen. But yet when we sign up, we're residents. When we pay taxes, we're Colorado residents. That's something that can actually be kind of exclusionary towards people and something to be kind of consider as well in policy and processes. Last is how the last consultants were let go. I really question how that happened, especially since they filled out an RFP that the city put out, but yet they were asked for their salary. And that was pretty demeaning, and as somebody that's Black and Indigenous watching that, it really made me question how I talk to you all and how you receive me. I do appreciate you saying my name correctly. That doesn't always happen here. So just something to think about as you go forward with this work, and I'm available to talk to if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bruce Morrison.
Hi. I'd like to thank the City Council for all the work you do and all the meetings you attend. And I know it's long work, and we appreciate it. I am also here to talk about, to ask you to have a external third-party diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant, and that their work and their scope of work include public safety. And because I'm a runner. I'm part of an odd club, but I like to go out and run through the parks and streets of Arvada. I've lived here for 33 years. I figure I have run through the streets of Arvada over 3,000 times. And when I hear of people who come to Arvada, or people of color, that have been stopped multiple times by police, I think it's powerful evidence that we do need diversity and inclusion, and it does need to include public safety. I'm not a fan of consultants particularly. My experience has been working for businesses that hire a consultant, pay them $10,000, $20,000, have them ask their employees what they want to do, and write up in a report and tell them when they could have just asked their employees. So I'm not a big fan of it, but I think in this case, it is very important to have an external party look at things, somebody that has expertise in diversity and inclusion issues, and can look at Arvada from the outside and see what we can do to improve. I also think we have people in Arvada from Russia and Ukraine, and we have a lot of people of Latin background, and so we have some diversity in Arvada. The school my kids went to had like 17 different languages, but where am I going with this? But I don't see how a person of color, particularly an African American, moves into Arvada. What is going to make them feel safe? And if they are threatened by a fellow Arvadan or somebody else, do we feel comfortable telling them to report that to the police? How would the police respond if one person said they were threatened based on race? I'm not quite sure. So I do think we need a consultant to look at this and to find all the barriers that for opportunity in Arvada. Thank you.
Thank you. Joyce Richardson.
Hi,
Hi, good evening, members of the City Council and the mayor at home. Thank you for the opportunity to comment today. My name is Joyce Richardson, and I've lived and owned our home in Arvada since 1988. I appreciate and thank the council for allowing study sessions to be broadcast to Arvada citizens in your move toward more transparency. I think that's a great thing. But to that end, I would like to address my thoughts and concerns about diversity, equity, and inclusion work that the council is undertaking. I want to urge the council to engage a broad swath of Arvada citizenry by using a third-party organization sensitive and knowledgeable about how to elicit experiences and problems our citizenry may have experienced. Not all citizens or residents feel comfortable telling anyone in an official capacity about difficulties that they may have experienced in public areas like parks and trails, city venues, and offices. I urge you to take a deep dive into learning about how some of our citizens are, what they're experiencing. There are many stories out there, I've heard several, and the city needs to be willing to hear them and address them. I urge you to make this a priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Georgia Duncan.
Good evening. My name is Georgia Duncan. I live at 6440 Youngfield Street here in Arvada, and I'm a member of Arvadans for Progressive Action. I'm here to comment in favor of your continued work on plans for a diversity, equality, and inclusion task force. I guess they are to advise City Council. I'm assuming this would mean this committee would figure out ways to make Arvada more welcoming to people of different races and national origin groups in housing and government. And they would field complaints when Arvada was not being welcoming to these groups. The task force would help City Council make decisions in all of these three areas. Members of the task force could engage with the community when something came up that needed discussion. I understand that you have started this process already and are investigating what other cities in our area are doing about this matter. These are vital issues for Arvada. I commend the city for embarking on this important work. I urge you to keep at it. We all know what an inviting and progressive city Arvada is to live in. We want all residents and visitors here to feel welcome.
Thank you very much. Ms. Rush, do we have anybody on Zoom? Julie, can you hear us? Go ahead and...
Yes. Hello, Mayor Williams and council members. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Julie Rinkowski, and I also am speaking today in support of the diversity, equity, and inclusion work, and I'd like to share why. I'm really proud of our city's mission statement that we're dedicated to delivering superior services to enhance the lives of everyone in our community. And it matters to me that we do take the steps necessary to ensure that it's a reality for every single Arvadan. I'm a member of Arvadans for Social Justice. I'm also a Christian and a member of the Arvada Vineyard Church. And for me, my faith means being committed to loving my neighbors, and in this case, loving my literal neighbors, my fellow Arvadans. And after touring a lot of schools, the school choice process is wonderful and hard at the same time. After doing that in our area, my husband and I selected our children's school partly because it's diverse in many ways, from life experience to income level and race and ethnicity to native language, neurodiversity, just to name a few things. And I think as we've heard a few people mention, that's not always the norm in Arvada. And my family has the joy of getting to know our neighbors and doing life with them through field days and Girl Scout meetings and birthday parties. And so it matters to me that Arvada delivers superior services to enhance not just my life and that of my family, but also the lives of every Arvadan. And I will not speak for my friends or other fellow Arvadans, but just as you invited and heard the experiences of marginalization and oppression from some community members a couple years ago, I ask that their experiences be sought out further by this body and that actions be considered in light of what is learned. And I know that this requires a lot: intentionality, time, resources. I do commend you all for the steps that have already been proposed. Some of them have been mentioned already, such as the community dialogue about racial justice solutions in Arvada, the directive to learn about other jurisdictions in our area in the realm of DEI, and hiring a consultant. And it's my understanding that these steps have been on hold and their due dates have passed. So I ask that the city move forward with these steps immediately and that a consultant is engaged to advise us through this process, because the process is just as valuable as what comes from it. I'm anxious to see what's learned through these actions and to see the steps that emerge from them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate all of your comments tonight, and I know that there is action being taken to follow up with exactly what you've given us feedback on tonight, so thank you. Appreciate that. Moving on, next on our agenda is the consent agenda. Go ahead.
For those that testified, we appreciate those comments, and we are taking it serious, and I'm sure we'll give updates. But one thing I will give back to the speakers tonight that I did not hear, which kind of disturbs me, is I consider accessibility. Those that have disabilities are not in those discussions. We have over $80 million of ADA ramps that need to be fixed, and no one's talking about that. So for us to take our time to get through the EDI process, I'm advocating for all accessibility to Arvada. Includes those that are disabled, those that have hearing impaired, those that have visual issues, racial, merit, it's everything. So we need to be inclusive. And I just want to be very clear, because I appreciate everyone's comments, but we can't even keep handicap spots open for folks to get into the store. And we need to look at looking at everything. So I believe the council, we've had this conversation in our study session. I just want to put some realization around why we're taking our time, because inclusivity is a huge word of mine. I've been on this council for 11 years. It used to be on a sign on Kipling at 58th. And when you define inclusivity, we need to be very clear about what that means, which is everything. And so let's not just focus on race. Let's look at all the matters together. Thank you for letting me have a few words.
Thank you, Mr. Pfeiffer. All right, we'll move on to our consent agenda items. The first item on the consent agenda is R22-044, a resolution authorizing amendment number 1 to the agreement between the City of Arvada and Carlo Engineers, Inc., in the amount not to exceed $129,930 for services related to the Ralston WTP Solids Handling Project, project number 21-WA-50, awarding vendor phase 2 of the scope of work in an amount not to exceed $749,282. Next item is R22-045, a resolution authorizing change order number 1 to an agreement by and between the City of Arvada and Harvey Contractors, Inc., DBA American Striping Company, known as American Striping Company, LLC, for pavement marking maintenance services not to exceed $499,999 to increase the contract amount by $1 million. Next, R22-046, a resolution authorizing an agreement by and between the City of Arvada and Asphalt Specialties Company, Inc., for construction of CSB 22-ST-01 Phase 2 pavement resurfacing program in the amount not to exceed $4,994,553.38. And the final item on the consent agenda is R22-047, a resolution authorizing an agreement by and between the City of Arvada and Olfeson Lavery Corporation for the architectural and engineering design services for Myers Pool Replacement Project in an amount not to exceed $1,995,783. Mr. Pfeiffer.
Oh,
Sorry, was that from before?
That was before, but
Okay.
I'll be more than happy.
No, Ms. Simpson has her light on as
Okay,
well.
thanks.
Okay. Thank you. So I move that the consent items, numbers Rs 22-044 through 047, be approved.
Items for approval. All votes are cast. Mayor Williams, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
That consent agenda item is approved 7-0 with Mayor Williams voting remotely. Next on the agenda are resolutions. Now we'll consider R22-048, a resolution authorizing an intergovernmental agreement for off-site public improvements for the Trailstone development between the City of Arvada, Colorado, and the Jefferson Center Metropolitan District Number 1. Mr. Devitt.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this resolution will authorize this intergovernmental agreement that will support the construction of the required public improvements for the Trailstone development. Our team has negotiated this IGA with the Jefferson Center Metropolitan District Number 1. It will, IGA set the terms and conditions associated with the construction installation of the off-site public improvements for this development, which is located south of Candelas Parkway, north of Highway 72, and immediately west of the future proposed Jefferson Parkway. This will allow for the construction of the sanitary sewer interceptor, reconfiguration and diversion structure, the sanitary sewer connection, and then Candelas Parkway sidewalk and landscaping, Highway 72 trail system and landscaping, and the Candelas Parkway right in, right out at the intersection with the Big Dry Creek Trail connection. It's, I think, important to note that the sanitary sewer improvements will not only serve the needs of the Trailstone development, but will also support the reinvestment in the North Trunk sewer line, which will help with not only northwest Arvada, but other parts of Arvada as well. The other improvements along Candelas Parkway, the trail improvements and so forth, are primarily amenities that would serve the Candelas residential area. So we're recommending approval of the resolution and therefore approval of the IGA.
Thank you. Ms. Rush, do we have anybody wishing to speak on this item? Thank you. Any questions or discussion from council? Or motion? Mr. Pfeiffer?
Painfully, I'll do it, I guess. I was trying to see if Lisa wanted or somebody knew. The Arvada, I move that resolution 22-048, a resolution authorizing an intergovernmental agreement for off-site public improvements for the Trailstone development between the City of Arvada, Colorado, and Jefferson Center Metropolitan District Number 1 be approved.
All votes are cast. Motions for approval, Mr. Mayor.
I vote aye.
That motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much. Now we'll go into first readings. Mr. Marriott.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that Council Bill 22-061, an ordinance vacating a portion of right-of-way as platted with Candelas Medical Filing Number 1 subdivision located northwest of West 91st Drive, the City of Arvada, County of Jefferson, State of Colorado, and Council Bill 22-062, an ordinance amending Article 4, Engineering Code of Standards and Specifications of Chapter 78, Public Improvements of the Arvada City Code, thereby repealing the existing Engineering Code of Standards and Specifications for design and construction of public improvements dated January 12, 2016, and adopting a new code titled Engineering Code of Standards and Specifications dated July 26, 2022. Both public hearings to be set for July 18th, 2022 at 6:15 p.m.
Motions for approval.
In order published in full, right?
That's correct. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ordered, published in full.
Thank you, Mayor. All votes are cast. Mr. Mayor, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
First reading is passed 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Marriott. I will now open public hearing for Council Bill 22-058, an ordinance amending Section 38-304, smoking prohibited, of Division 3, smoking restricted in public places, of Article 7, air pollution, of Chapter 38, environment of the Arvada City Code, ordinance number 4805. Mr. Devon.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is basically a cleanup to get our ordinance actually consistent with state law and to excuse me. Basically a ordinance to make our ordinance consistent with the state law and to also align with federal law and raising the minimum age for tobacco products to age 21. We had noticed as we worked through our ordinance that we actually had an inconsistency with what was being allowed in the Arvada City Code within our environment at the Arvada Center, so this is actually a cleanup ordinance to get that consistent. We recommend approval.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll open up the public portion of this hearing. Ms. Rush, do we have anybody wishing to speak on this item of business? Seeing none, we'll close this public portion, comment portion, and we'll open it up to City Council comments or questions. Mr. Pfeiffer.
If there's not any questions, I'll make the motion.
Ms. Simpson?
No, I was just going to make a comment about the Arvada Center, so it's okay.
Okay. Mr. Pfeiffer, proceed with your motion.
What did you want to ask about that? Because that is actually valid.
Yeah, well, I wasn't so much as going to ask as say I realize that we have many wonderful creative types at the Arvada Center for the Arts and Humanities. For those of you who haven't been, you should go. And I apologize to them if this impacts their future theater productions.
Okay, I'll move that Council Bill 22-058, an ordinance amending Section 38-304, smoking prohibited, of Division 3, smoking restricted in public places, of Article 7, air pollution, of Chapter 38, environment, of the City of Arvada City Code be approved on final reading number 4805 and ordered published by title only.
Thank you. All motions for approval. Mr. Mayor, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
That passes 7-0 with the mayor voting remotely. Next, I'll open public hearing Council Bill 22-059, an ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement by and between the City of Arvada and the State of Colorado, Department of Higher Education, State Board for Community Colleges and Occupational Education, acting by and through Red Rocks Community College for a 100-year lease of a parcel north of Red Rocks Community College for the construction of a health and fitness-focused park, ordinance number 4806. Mr. Devon.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this ordinance would allow us to go forward with the Holistic Health and Fitness Park, which is a collaborative public park project in collaboration with the Red Rocks Community College. This will allow the advancement of curriculum degrees and certificates such as holistic health, reflexology, yoga, and rehabilitation. It will also provide an additional resource to our Parks and Recreation system, which will focus on health and other activities that will benefit the community. We have been working on this for quite some time, and we believe it will be a great asset to our community, as well as a great asset to Red Rocks Community College and their higher education community college programs there. Therefore, we recommend that you approve this ordinance and this intergovernmental agreement to allow us to go forward with this lease, which will enable us to develop the future funding for the actual construction of the park in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Devon. I'll open the public comment portion of this hearing. Ms. Rush, do we have anyone wishing to speak? I will close the public comment portion of this hearing and open it up for council member questions or actions. Mr. Mormon.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'm happy to make the motion, and I do have a question.
Okay, go ahead with your question.
I'm just curious if the Arvada team can describe a little bit more about how this park differs from other parks and what is entailed in a health and fitness focused park.
Sure, I'm happy to answer that question. So this park is designed to provide spaces for folks to recreate outdoors and have classrooms outdoors to learn about health and fitness as well. There have been design elements that include spaces for yoga, spaces for reflexology, so for folks to be able to recline in the park in a comfortable way with shade. There's been elements including an incline to increase cardio exercise in the park as well. So altogether, the focus of this park is to invite people to exercise outdoors, to have a space to meditate, and to learn about health and fitness as well.
Great. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Ms. Simpson.
The curriculum portion actually made it interesting to me. Is there potential for those who are students who are perhaps interested in becoming fitness educators to work with not just their peers, but actually with children in our community?
You know, Councilmember Simpson, I'm not very familiar with the exact curriculum offerings for the program that Red Rocks Community College has, but I imagine that there will be opportunities for folks who are looking to get into fitness careers to practice their skills and educate children in the park as well. So I can follow up with more information about those opportunities after this meeting, if that works for you.
That would be awesome. And my bad, not just children, but our seniors and whatnot. And I could see a lot of potential opportunities
That's a key
Apex
element
as well.
That's a key element of this park as well, kind of intergenerational recreation and health and fitness.
Wonderful. Yeah. And that goes to some of our comments here tonight about inclusivity. Happy to see it.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, Mr. Mormon, you may make the motion.
Thank you. I move that CB 22-059, an ordinance authorizing an intergovernmental agreement by and between the City of Arvada and the State of Colorado, Department of Higher Education, State Board for Community Colleges and Occupational Education, acting by and through Red Rocks Community College for a 100-year lease of a parcel north at Red Rocks Community College for the construction of a health and fitness-focused park, be approved on final reading.
Motions for approval. Mr. Pfeiffer, you wish to speak?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. This has been years in the making, and I remember when it was just an idea. It's nice to finally see before I leave that this is actually happening. It's a beautiful parcel. I think there was a water tank at the top, if I'm remembering the exact spot. It's going to be great. And the one thing we need to keep in mind, these are the type of parks that also help with our mental health. So, that's something we want to keep in mind with these type of activities. But appreciate that this is finally happening, and I applaud the team and Red Rocks team to finally making this a reality. So good job.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, I've done a horrible job of making sure that you've had an opportunity to comment on anything. Is there anything you need to comment on this?
No, this is a great project. Thank you for that, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I will be supporting the motion.
Thank you. All votes are cast, and that passes 7-0. All right. Next item for public hearing is Council Bill 22-060, an ordinance authorizing the master intergovernmental agreement by and between Apex Park and Recreation District and the City of Arvada governing the lease and maintenance of certain facilities and parks and amending the ground lease for the indoor turf fields on the Stinger Letts Sports Complex Ordinance number 4807. Mr. Devon.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, historically our operating agreements between the city and Apex have been governed under 4 separate intergovernmental agreements. These agreements had many challenges. In some cases they overlapped, they expired at different times. It was a little difficult to keep track of them. Sometimes they expired without us properly renewing them. And so as we transitioned into a new relationship with the Apex Parks and Recreation District, we determined that we really needed to put all of these separate agreements into a master agreement. And I really want to applaud our partners at Apex who embraced the idea, endorsed the idea, and started working with us. I want to thank and state my appreciation for our new leadership in the Vibrant Community Neighborhoods Work System, who also collaborated with our partners at Apex to develop this master agreement, bring it before you tonight, and we are recommending its approval, as I believe it will very much improve in our management and coordination and collaboration with the Apex Park and Recreation District.
Thank you very much. I'll now open the public comment portion of this hearing. Ms. Rush, do we have anyone wishing to speak? I will close the public comment portion of this hearing and open it up for City Council questions or action. Mr. Pfeiffer, your light is on. Is that from last time? Okay. Ms. Smith.
I'll make the motion. Anyone?
All right. Are there any other questions? All right. Seeing none, you may proceed.
I move that CB 22-060, an ordinance authorizing the master intergovernmental agreement by and between Apex Park and Recreation District and the City of Arvada governing the lease and maintenance of certain facilities and parks and amending the ground lease for the indoor turf field on the Stenger Lutz Sports Complex to be approved on final reading numbered 4807 and ordered published by title only.
Thank you. Motion.
Mayor Pro Tem, I do wish to speak to this one in particular. The relationship between Apex and Arvada created this incredible facility a few years ago. Those who have been in Arvada for a number of years remember the old ice rink was located at what is now Arvada Central Park. And that was in the floodplain. It was an aged facility, and it was through a cooperative effort between the city and Apex that the beautiful indoor facility was built on Stenger Lutz Complex. In fact, you can go back and the former chair, Jim Whitfield of Apex, and myself doing a video on you can get it on YouTube. What a great facility it is. I applaud the efforts of both Apex and the city to bring this to fruition. I will enthusiastically support this motion.
Thank you very much. So with that, all votes are cast and this passes 7-0 with the mayor voting remotely. All right. Next, we're going to move into our land use matter. Now, council takes its responsibility in deciding these land use matters very seriously. As such, each member of council has taken the time to appropriately prepare for this matter. Preparation by members of council for this matter has included reviewing the public packet and, in some cases, council visits to the site to acquaint themselves with the physical layout of the site. No testimony was taken during any of those site visits, and all written comments received by council are included in the public packet. All members of council have committed to reserving their decision on this matter until all evidence and arguments have been presented at tonight's public hearing. So with that, I will now open public hearing for the ratification and approval of CP 2022-0002, a resolution by the Planning Commission for the City of Arvada, Colorado, to amend the 2014 Arvada Comprehensive Plan land use designation pertaining to Candelas filing number 1, amendment number 4, from suburban residential to mixed-use residential, emphasis approximately located at 9367 McIntyre Street. At the same time, we will also consider PUD development plan for Candelas filing number 1, amendment number 4, approximately located at 9367 McIntyre Street, and the preliminary plat for Candelas filing number 1, amendment number 4, approximately located at 9367 McIntyre Street. Mr. Devon.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, will have Planning Manager Rob Smetana introduce these items for your consideration.
Thank you. The applicant is requesting ratification of a comprehensive plan future land use map amendment from suburban residential to mixed use to align with the existing zoning on the property, and PUD development plan and preliminary plat approval for a mixed-use community on 2 parcels located on either side of McIntyre Street, north of Candelas Parkway. The project is proposed to include 42 townhome units, 33 multifamily units, and approximately 8,000 square feet of retail and commercial space. The multifamily units will be located above the commercial space in buildings directly adjacent to McIntyre Street. Vehicular access is to be provided from 93rd Place for each parcel, as well as an access on Kilmer Way for the eastern parcel. The number of parking spaces provided exceeds the city's requirements for these types of uses. The Planning Commission voted unanimously to approve the comprehensive plan amendment and recommend approval of the PUD development plan and preliminary plat during their May 17th meeting. We have received the signed posting log and mailing affidavit, and they are in order. The applicant is in attendance for a presentation and questions, and we also have Senior Planner Carol Ibanez here to answer any questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Will anyone who wishes to testify on this matter please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will be giving in these proceedings will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. The applicant.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, before you proceed, please make the posting log and mailing affidavit a part of the record.
Thank you very much, Mayor, for correcting me on that. We'll make that a part of the record. Now the applicant may provide their presentation. That's why it's good to have you in the background, Mr. Mayor.
And the fact that I'm a former lawyer, you know.
Yeah, that helps. Thank you. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor Williams, Mayor Pro Tem Jones, and Council. Thank you for having us this evening. TriPoint Homes, a national builder, has been building homes in Colorado for about 8 years now. We've been building in the city of Arvada for 7 of those 8 years, and would like to continue with this project. We are currently building in the city of Arvada in a townhome that was approved last time we were before you, which is the Amendment 5 portion of this. So we would like to continue that product and that offering on this project. Our team here tonight is, we have Norris Design, we have the Pochner Company, we have Martin & Martin, we have Godden Sudic Architects, and Kimley Horn with us this evening. With that, I will turn it over to Marcus from the Pochner Company.
Thank you, Dan. If I may, are we just, if we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Thank you very much for this opportunity to address you this evening and to share really our work product over the last 2 years on this site. If you can go to the next slide, please. I'll give a little context and follow that one. Next slide. This is the site there in blue. It looks like a little bean-shaped property there right off of Candelas Parkway at McIntyre and 92nd, entering the Candelas neighborhood. All of you certainly know this remarkably, and I say this to all of you, this is the last undeveloped parcel in Candelas. Everything else is now planned and in the development phase except for this last remaining site. Next slide, please. I also want to show you in the context of the existing PDP, this is Candelas filing number 1. It shows all the lot plats and the plats that were attached to this in the PDP and the preliminary plat. It is pretty, to be here today, one of the things I want to acknowledge is that anytime you come through with the last site in a planned community, it is always challenging. It is challenging because we are now full of residents and people have adopted to the way the community has developed. This is a gateway site. This is a primary entrance into the community. But I do want to state by saying the density and the infrastructure and utilities have all been planned on this site and planned for the density and the development that we are proposing. Next slide, please. I'm going to start by describing a little bit of the community outreach. Next slide, please. Again, the Pochner Company, my company, we specialize in neighborhood engagement. We were actually hired after this was presented to City Council in June of 2020. 2 years ago, it was brought to City Council. Council ultimately rejected that rezoning because they wanted to see a mixed-use component in this site. They thought the community being promised that. So TriPoint, to their credit, said, we want a firm to go see what that means. What does that mean to the community? We use a concentric outreach philosophy where we work with the most affected and impacted neighbors, and we go out from there and really try to plan from the outside in. So this gives some of the ideas, some of the groups, including the Metro District that we met with. Next slide, please. As I said, the history of this site, this was what was presented to all of you 2 years ago. It was for 57 units. It was only residential. Planning Commission had approved it, but council said, we have heard from neighbors that we want to see mixed use here. That's more consistent with the underlying plan. It's more consistent with why people brought property here. We want to see the inclusion of mixed use on this site. So again, from that point in June of 2020, we have focused entirely on how to develop a neighborhood plan that really evokes what this site should be from a neighborhood context. Next slide. In order to do that, we wanted to go to the community. So we went back and decided to structure our community outreach first by having individual meetings. We reached out to the 40 individuals or individuals that had testified. We then had 6 large community meetings to talk about the elements. This actually shows some of the temporary and permanent uses that we were proposing on the site. And then we came back and showed what retail could be on this site and how it could work and the way it could happen in this infill location. So if you go to the next slide, this is actually shows you the surveys that we did with the community. This is what the community said they wanted to see here. In addition to the residential, they wanted to see dining areas, to see mixed-use residential and retail. That's 86% roughly if you combine those three of what people. They wanted a true gathering place at this location that really brought the community together. Next slide, please. In more specificity, we asked, what is your top priority? As you can see here, it said neighborhood scale retail. 52% of the respondents in all of our meetings said, we want to see that neighborhood scale, to really have that. So this is a place that I can walk to, perhaps drive to, I hope walk or bike to, but really to have neighborhood-based retail for the site. This is, also matched that discussion that we had with council some 2 years ago. Next slide.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question?
Why don't let's get through this. Cool. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. This is the culmination of this. We did 40 individual meetings, or 56 individual meetings. We've had 180 individuals participate in our community meetings, and we have notified well over 1,000 community members, including using the Metro District newsletter for all of our meetings. The next slide shows the main takeaways that we heard, again, the community gathering space, and that they wanted to be assured this would not be just a residential development only, that there would be a mix of uses on the site. Next slide. Bonnie will go through this in more detail, our planner, but this is the evolution of the plan and the plan that is reflected in the documents before you today. As was mentioned, we are proposing 42 townhomes and reduction in the number of townhomes, 33 multifamily units, and roughly 8,000 square feet of retail on the ground floor of those multifamily units. This is the envisionment of how to bring that forward, how to bring retail in the community. I do want to show, as we go to the next slide, what we went through as a developer to bring retail. Folks, we did a full presentation on temporary uses. As you know, this was during the COVID time period. We didn't think there was a market for retail at this location. And the neighbors, we did temporary and permanent uses. They said, we want permanent. We want to see brick and mortar built on this site. So we went to the market to develop the site, and this is what we've ended up doing. We have given away the retail land to develop this site. There are no land costs, no land basis in this site, and even with that land being given away, they have to build the multifamily to allow the retail to be built. This is a tweener site, but we absolutely want this vision, this community vision, to come to fruition, so we have gone to that extent to develop that. So this shows those mixed-use buildings, the first floor, which has the commercial and retail, and then the 2 stories of residential units above being proposed. Next slide. I do want to just say this was actually a specific request, the comp plan change that is before you. The neighbors wanted certainty that there would not be only residential. So they said, we want you to change the underlying comp plan. And as you know, to have a mixed-use building in Arvada, you have to have this change to mixed-use residential emphasis in your comp plan. So we are doing that specifically to honor the requests of the neighborhood and to bring this mixed-use product forward. Next slide, please. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Bonnie Nijelik. I will come back at the very end of our presentation as well. Bonnie, go right ahead.
Good evening, Bonnie Nijelik, Norris Design, 1101 Bannock Street. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, City Council. Thank you, staff. Next slide, please. As Marcus mentioned, the proposed neighborhood plan includes 3-story mixed-use buildings fronting both sides of McIntyre Street. You can see those in kind of the pale pinky peach color. The mixed-use buildings include approximately 8,300 square feet of ground floor commercial uses with 33 multifamily homes above them. This plan transitions to 42 2-story alley-loaded townhomes to the east and west side of the mixed-use buildings. The residential density is just under 14 DUs per acre and is supported by a mix of garage and surface parking along with 1.8 acres of open space, providing landscape buffers along the perimeter. Next slide, please. A lot of attention was paid to the McIntyre Street corridor to create an activated pedestrian environment that connects to the Swim and Fitness Club to the north. This includes urban plazas at the intersection of West 93rd, inset parallel parking spaces with parking bump outs to help facilitate pedestrian crossings, street furniture including bike racks, benches, and pedestrian lighting, and landscape entries at the Candelas Parkway intersection. Next slide. Here you can see a summary of the specific site details for the mixed use, which is the middle column, and then the townhomes on the right column. Some of these key items include a front setback of 8 feet for both the mixed use and townhomes to create pedestrian-friendly spaces along the perimeter sidewalks. It includes 25-foot wide townhomes, which is wider than a typical townhome. We have maximum heights of 45 feet for the mixed-use buildings and 35 feet for the townhomes. And we've provided maximum building coverages for both building types. Next slide. Parking is also provided in a variety of ways. All townhomes have 2-car garages, which are shown here in the orange boxes. The townhomes on the north side of the neighborhood also have 2-car driveways, which are shown here in the green boxes. And surface parking is provided for guests along with the residential and commercial uses in the mixed-use buildings. Those are all identified in blue. Additional guest parking is provided along McIntyre, which is shown here in brown. In total, there are 242 parking spaces provided across the site, compared to the requirement of 184 spaces. This is based on a minimum of 2 spaces per townhome, 2 spaces per multifamily unit, and 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet of commercial. In response to comments from the Planning Commission, 2 surface spaces on each block just south of the mixed-use buildings, so some of those blue spaces, that's a total of 4 spaces, will be converted to locations for trash enclosures. We've discussed this with staff and we'll update the final site plan within the final development plan process. But to be clear, even with the reduction of those 4 parking spaces, we are still above the minimum parking requirements per code. We're happy to walk through those detailed numbers if you want during question and answer. Next slide. One more, please. The mixed-use buildings are 3 stories and feature storefront glazing along the ground floor commercial spaces. These buildings include 1- and 2-bedroom units in a 4-sided modern prairie-style building with stepped parapet providing additional visual interest. Next slide. The townhome buildings include 3 floor plans in prairie and farmhouse elevation styles. The townhomes are a mix of 2-bed, 2.5 bath, and 3-bed, 3.5 bath plans. Materials include stone, lap siding, and board and bad siding, including street-facing entries and covered patios. Both the townhomes and mixed-use buildings meet the standards of both the Land Development Code and the Candelas Architectural Design Guidelines. Next slide. One more, please. And here we have a couple slides summary our compliance with the overall ODP. The ODP allows for a total of 1,950 units within parcels 2 and 10. This proposed plan creates a total of 1,922. This also includes a minor administrative modification that allows for a 20% shift between different planning areas, which was part of the original ODP. Next slide, please. The proposed neighborhood is also in compliance with the ODP from a height and use perspective. On the top chart here you can see the parcels where the townhomes are located allow building heights up to 35 feet, while the 2 mixed-use buildings go up to 50 feet. We're proposing a maximum of 35 feet for the townhomes and 45 feet for the mixed-use buildings in compliance with the ODP. On the bottom chart, you can see the parcels where the townhomes are located were originally intended for multifamily traditional neighborhood design uses. We're proposing single-family attached townhomes. And the parcels where the mixed-use buildings are located allow for commercial, retail, and multifamily residential uses. The narrative that went along with the original ODP noted this parcel 10 on either side of McIntyre should be designed to create a small main street that complements the adjacent rec center. Together, these two uses become a focal point within the traditional neighborhood design component of Candelas. Parcel 10 was intended to be mixed both horizontally and vertically. This horizontal and vertical mix of uses is consistent with the original vision. Next slide. The parks at Candelas are provided on a community-wide basis. The total parks at Candelas exceeds those that were originally required. Next slide. The open space at Candelas is also provided on a community-wide basis. The total open space provided at Candelas also exceeds those that were required. Next slide. And here you can see some of the adjacent park spaces and the variety of amenities that are provided within easy walking distance of these proposed homes. And with that, I'll let Marcus come up and give a quick summary.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I promise we are almost finished. Just a few more slides. We'll wrap up. This is our summary. I do want to state how important we think it is to have diversity of product. The for sale townhomes and the for rent, we actually think really matters for missing middle housing options that are not currently available or as available at Candelas. Next slide, please. I think most important, if I can share anything with you all, is the evolution of this plan over the last 2 years. This has been entirely based on feedback from the community. All 6 of these items are specific requests from neighbors. First, the mixed use. Number 2 is the parking bump outs. We are actually widening McIntyre to allow us to have parking, parallel parking inset to our site, so the travel lanes will stay the same as they are today, but we will have bump outs to have safety, to mitigate traffic concerns and pedestrian safety. 3, very important, we flipped all the driveways there so that we weren't abutting any of the adjacent streets, particularly on Kilmore. We have the prairie elevation, the architecture. We actually gained and garnered a lot of feedback about our proposed architecture. Number 5, we changed all of those units along Kilmer, so they are seating the side of the homes rather than the front of ours, so it has much less of a presence for the existing homes on Kilmer. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about the western screening on the western edge of our site. Next slide. These are actually something that we have continued to evolve even since Planning Commission. There were 4 speakers at the Planning Commission, and there was some discussion about some concern for 93rd. We have proposed to staff that we actually do additional traffic calming on 93rd and do bulb outs there for that parking as well, to really allow there to be safe pedestrian passage. As you see the park and the fitness club, as you all know, on the north side, that would narrow that street and actually make for much safer passageway. So we've proposed those, and as Monty said, we would make that in the final plat submittal. Next slide, please. Maybe as importantly, the 3 homes immediately to our west, we have worked with them very closely. I think a few of them are here. We are doing these things in agreement with them. We are providing a 6-foot wide or 6-foot height privacy fence. We are also working with them on the planting of deciduous and evergreen shrubs and trees to be sure it's from their view, right? It's different from everybody's backyard. A lot of times we do that once we build a site, so they know if there's a light or something that they're seeing that we can work with them on screening. So we are working very proactively with those 3. Additionally, they have a very serious drainage issue. We are going to allow them to tie into our drainage system to carry some water off of their site that is really making their backyards basically not function today. So we're also going to include that in our proposed drainage. Our last slide on the summary from the Planning Commission. Council members and mayor, this is what we heard, and these are the things that we have included. We have continued to change and alter our plan to reflect that. I am aware, and I want to say it with full respect, that there has been a petition that was started in the last week. It looks like there are a number of neighbors here to speak to that petition. I will be happy to address that and any questions you can have. I will say as we go to the next slide, and I'm not going to go into great detail on the approval criteria just to allow for testimony and question and answer, but our entire comp plan amendment and our PDP and Plat are entirely based in the comprehensive plan and the approval criteria. As I started this presentation by saying, this is a planned community, and the infrastructure on this site was actually planned for 2,300 units. With this build out, and this included, we will be under 2,000 units. The infrastructure is planned here. We have worked tremendously hard for 2 years to bring the neighborhood goal of a mixed-use community to fruition. I will say Carol's staff report was remarkably thorough on the approval criteria. I believe that we are in full compliance. We went through a wonderful 3-hour hearing with the Planning Commission, and I mean that, probably one of the most detailed. They thought that we had found the perfect balance in delivering mixed-use neighborhood services, and they unanimously approved our application. We would respectfully request that you join them in supporting this application, and we very much look forward to any questions you have. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. I'll now open the public comment portion of this hearing. We have several here that I'll just go through as I receive them, and then I think we also may have a couple on, no, we don't have any on Zoom? Okay. So I will call your name. If you would state your name and your address before you begin your comments, that would be great. And again, you'll have 3 minutes for your remarks. If somebody before you says what you wanted to say, you can say what they said, or you can say ditto, or you can say what you want to say. But just know that you've got 3 minutes to address City Council. First up, Jamie Wattman. Followed by Michael Dickerson, just so you'll know you're on deck there.
Hi, my name's Jamie Wattman. My address is 15376 West 94th Ave. It's my understanding that even though we've been told that there's, per code, the right amount of parking, that was including the townhome parking or their driveway spots as well. And so I'm just really concerned about people parking on McIntyre on both sides in front of the clubhouse, not where they're bumping in the extra space, but in front of the clubhouse on both sides. The bus stop is there, the school bus stop. Already, if there's one car parked there, kids are almost getting hit by cars because cars can't see them, poking out, trying to cross the street. As an adult, I've almost been hit because it is so hard to see around that corner on 94th and McIntyre. And so if there's just extra flow over cars that are parking on that street, I guarantee you a kid is going to get hit and die. And that's going to be a real shame. They cross there to go to the pool, to the rec center, to the playground, and to the bus stop. And I just don't think the amount of traffic that's going to be added is going to be a benefit. It's going to be a huge detriment to the kids in the neighborhood. And no one is opposing this mixed use idea. I know that was explained when we bought our house right around the corner, but it's too saturated, it's too much. And it's an accident waiting to happen. So we really urge you to consider this and really look at the parking situation closely and see if there really is the appropriate amount of parking for the retail and the apartments and the townhomes. And it's not counting, someone's 2 spaces in their driveway, because no one else visiting the retail can go park in someone's driveway. So if that's what it's counting towards, that seems a little ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Dickerson.
Good evening, Michael Derrickson, 15888 West 95th Avenue. I have pretty much similar concerns. This development is right next door to the community center, park, pool, and I'm out every day and I see kids every day crossing the streets, crossing McIntyre, crossing 93rd, in and out. And we all know people do not park the cars in garages. So the cars are going to be parked on 93rd, on McIntyre. It's going to be an enormous safety issue. And as much as they've tried to address some issues with all of this, we all know kids go running across streets, they don't look. I mean, you add 75 or so more units and all those people, it's going to make things severely congested, much more dangerous. And I mean, just the idea of adding that many more residents in this area where there's a pool, where there's kids, elderly people crossing constantly is just reckless, dangerous, and just flat out negligent. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Janet Meyer.
Hi, my name is Janet Meyer. I'm at 9330 Nile Court. So TriPoint is a residential builder, and they bought a plot that we thought was supposed to be a Five Parks area. Five Parks has restaurants. It has parking lots. It has places for people to gather. And what's being proposed here is some commercial that seems to me is going to be more like for a tax attorneys or a real estate agent. It can't be a gathering place where you have restaurants. There's only 12 spots. That's where employees would park, in my opinion. So you have this commercial space with 12 spots, but you also have employees and people wanting to come and be part of the community area. So if the original plans that we were shown were built, we would be fine with it. We're not trying to get this thing canceled. We understand there's going to be living spaces, but we also understood that there was going to be more gathering spaces, more restaurants, more delis or coffee shops. And we are about 3.5 miles, so people can't all walk there. It's a 7-mile back and forth trek if you want to walk, if you're in the further part of Candelas. The plan that they have, it looks to me, is less than 20% commercial. They have increased the density from their first plan by quite a bit. I believe that this plan should not be approved because, as your residents, we paid premium price for these lots because we were promised a 5 parks. And it is really not the job of City Council to bail out a national corporation who made a bad decision, but to vote for the welfare of their constituents. And Arvada's own 2019 study of Candelas' retail, which was published in arvada.org, states, quote, "Embrace mixed-use elements to create retail vibrancy," unquote. The pictures included in this study depict a 5 parks type of area, and this proposal hardly meets the 5 parks type of space that we were all promised. And lastly, I'm sure that there is nobody here who would appreciate a townhome literally 10 feet off of their backyard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Elizabeth Ash. I don't know if I said that right.
Oh. Members of the council, Mayor Williams, thank you for your time. Congratulations first on your 10-year vision of Arvada for the heart of Old Town Arvada. We in Candelas like to think that we are a major artery into that heart, and that's why we are concerned. In June 2020, over 500 Candelas residents signed a petition stopping TriPoint development, and I want a correction here. It's not because of the aftermath. It was because there was a promise on paper of the 5 parks vision, and so we stopped it at that point. Council members, at that time, you were poised to approve that plan, and unanimously voted it down because you understood at that point that they were not meeting their obligation. TriPoint, I am a TriPoint owner. My house is literally 100 feet away from this lot, and you did not talk to me. I am one of the 40 people that presented, and you did not talk to me. You also
Ma'am,
did
if
not
you'll
talk
address
to my
council,
neighbors.
please.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
So I was not addressed or asked my opinion at the time. Today, TriPoint's plan includes the retail building that they had promised originally. It also includes overcrowding, safety issues for traffic and parking, lack of studies on community impact on resources like water, Garbage removal, you're putting trash bins out now, so residents are going to have to walk their trash. I don't know how you're going to fit a fire truck in there, and we are certainly in a fire and wind area. City Council members, if you can't imagine this dense development in your neighborhood, please don't imagine it in ours. Kids dodging cars, garbage trucks parking in the middle of the streets because they cannot get into the development. Tri-Point, this is your legacy project in Candelas. Maybe you don't see it that way, but there is a lot of pride in Tri-Point owners that feel it in their homes, and this would be the thing that when Tri-Point's name is mentioned, this is the thing that people will remember. So on Friday, June 17th, Candelas residents once again put out a petition. Friday, June 17th at 6 p.m. By 12 o'clock noon on June 18th, there was over 500 residents that signed that petition once again, and I guarantee you it was not the same 500 residents. Tri-Point, what do we see that you don't see? City Council members, Mayor, we hope that you can see it clearly. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Boat? Sorry, Aaron. Bot. Thank you.
Okay, I live at 9364 Kilmer Way, so I am just catty corner to this new development. It's very passionate to me because my kids, I walk them to the bus every day. I know the reality of this, and I think I've shown you guys pictures of our reality. Parking is not being addressed. We have 40 spots that are driveways. Are you going to allow somebody to come to a retail store and park in your driveway? So the 54 surplus that they are claiming in their plans, take 40 out of those, because that is not for the entire community. That's like asking the driveways next to the school up the way and counting those numbers into your parking for the school. You cannot do that. You cannot use personal spaces towards a retail plan. Those belong to 20 people, so knock those out. You're now down to 14. Oh, we just took away 4 more parking spots for trash, that our trash is now going to sit out there. We already have bears coming into the neighborhood. We already have coyotes coming into the neighborhood. Great plan. Let's just add more congestion and more cars in our area. I'm so emotional about this. There's so many things I want to say. So that's my biggest thing, is that parking. We've got to address that, and reality is we have not addressed it. And I don't even know, I made so many notes. I'm scared for my kids. I walk them to the bus every day. I've also almost been hit. And I don't let them walk in the early morning hours because the amount of traffic. We're adding 75 households. Let's be real. 75 households, that's at least 75 cars, which we know the driveways are one issue, but then you have the garages. They have to store their garbage bins in their garages. Why? Because the Metro District does not allow them to be stored outside. So there goes 1 parking spot. Unless if you have a Mini Cooper, maybe you can still get 2 in there. But let's be real, we're going to then knock down another 42 spots. You go up to the Parkview townhomes up the way, because we do have diversity in our neighborhood, and you will see, on Sunday, I was driving by there to go play soccer with my kids at the school, and streets in between the townhomes are lined with cars. They have parking lots because people do not park their cars in the garages. It is a reality. And that's why I sent you all those pictures, to show you the reality. We can put numbers on paper all day long. That's great. But we need to look at reality and understand that there's not even a basement in these townhomes to store anything. The city commissioner asked last time, Tri-Point, and said, so you're saying I can't put a couch in my garage if I want? And they stood up there and said, no, you can't. The HOA will enforce that you cannot store anything in your garage. They said it, and I know I think Randy was here during that meeting. I don't know, you look familiar. But they did say, yeah, we'll enforce it. But they get to leave. They're not part of our community.
If you could wrap up your thoughts.
Okay, yeah. They're not part of the community. They get to build and leave. We're all here. We're all part of it. We know what reality is.
Thank you. Next, Mike Samal. Samuel, okay. Salmon.
My name is Mike Salmon. I live at 9574 Joyce Way. I've been a community member in Candelas now for about 9 years. Just for your record, the pool's been down for about 5 of those years in disrepair or closed for use for several of those years. I want to talk really about how this resolution will result in adverse impact to our community. I drive McIntyre, and that exit at least 4 to 6 times a day. It's the main entrance for the majority of people that live on that eastern side of the neighborhood. And to the point about parking cars, people putting things in garages, I want to talk a little about the Metro District and their failure to enforce the covenants. The residents in the neighborhood now believe that because the covenants have not been enforced, the district has abandoned the covenants. By observing the neighborhood, a reasonable person with knowledge of the covenants would conclude that due to the widespread violations, the association has abandoned the enforcement, maintenance of the common areas, operation and maintenance of the pool, architectural review of improvements, and the enforcement of parking. They park campers, they park trailers, even calling into the city of Arvada, putting notices in, they still don't move them. The HOA has no power to enforce it, no power to remove the cars. The builder and developer, I moved in, this was supposed to be single family on one side, and it was supposed to be a commercial on the other with restaurants and other facilities. I mean, this is original Candelas moving in, one of the first residents. The builder and developer will not honor their future responsibilities. The commitments they've failed to make, and they will continue to fail to enforce the commitments. Do not approve this land use resolution. It will only exacerbate the current issues of parking, maintenance, and the traffic volumes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Jenny Pergola.
Good evening. My name is Jenny Pergola. My address is 9527 Nile Way, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight, or talk to you, I guess. But I'm actually an Arvada native. So I grew up in, at the time, what was sort of central Arvada and now is more eastern Arvada. This is my first city council meeting, and by such, I hope you can understand how passionate I am over this issue to make this, after all of these years, my first meeting to attend. My primary memory of growing up in Arvada is the safe neighborhoods that we had the opportunity to be raised in and grow up in. And with the newly proposed or additionally proposed development plan, what this is doing is, if my notes are correct, the initial number of homes, if you will, whether it's apartment, townhome, single family, whatever, was 57. In the new proposal, in addition to commercial buildings, it's 75 homes. So it's, yes, meeting the request of residents of commercial space, but it's actually also, nearly 50% additional of homes. Now, if you have a 2-bedroom apartment, you're likely to have at least 2 drivers. That's 2 vehicles. That fills up at least both garages. If you have a visitor, if you have a child who's of driving age, you likely have a 3rd vehicle. Where do those cars go? And one of the things that I'd like to just call to recognition is that in the renderings, they're beautiful drawings. They look nice and spacious and pretty. The area that we're talking about is roughly 1 block. So if you have a bump out on McIntyre, 1 block on one side and 1 block on the other side, with those 4 spots, that's 8 spots. That doesn't account for very much. And my husband and I were one of the original residents of Candelas. We moved in March of 13. And we have watched as the development has grown, which, by the way, we're not opposed to this mixed use. We're actually very excited for it. But we've watched with the spread and sprawl of the community, there is, as others have said, the streets are overflowed with parking already as it is. Adding these 75 additional home spaces is only going to further those issues. I've watched children, adults, dogs, bicyclists all be nearly hit multiple times, at least 5. And with adding this huge high density at the very entry of the neighborhood, I see that potentially just exacerbating the issue. And as Arvadans, it's my understanding, and I've always felt, that we care about all Arvadans, and whether a child or a person is hit in West Arvada versus Central Arvada versus South Arvada, life is still life, and safety is still safety, and I beg you to please consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Laura Carpenter.
Hi, I'm Laura Carpenter. I live at 9320 Nile Court. This is my backyard. I'm one of the residences to the western side. My better half couldn't be here today, so I'm speaking for both of us. I would like to agree with everyone that's been up so far about the traffic issues, safety concerns there are. I actually have 4 teenagers, so I understand the parking concerns because we have 4 cars in front of our house for my 4 teenagers right now. 3 in college now and 1 soon to be. So there are a lot of concerns that we have to what's going to happen in this development behind us. I am a native of Colorado, of Arvada, born and raised, been here and away for school and then came back. So I'm very proud of this community and I enjoy where I've lived throughout the years. 68th and Carr was my home, right near, just up the hill from here. And then I have lived in 5 Parks for almost 10 years also. So I know the 5 Parks community very well. And I also chose Candelas to live because I knew it would be a similar type environment when we moved over there and what was presented to us. So I do want to say that I understand that TriPoint has worked very hard to try to work with Pachner Group to get everything figured out as to what's going to happen and how to plan and try to listen to the community. I do feel like they've heard some things. I'm not sure that we've heard everything. I do have concerns for the higher amount of townhomes that are getting developed. I'm thankful that they're willing to work with us on drainage issues. They're talking to us about screening issues. We do have very high winds. I'm still concerned about screening and fence lines and how that's going to work. I know that we have a very minimal setback that was talked about when we were in the Planning Commission, that my neighbors, which I'm probably going to lose both of them, that live on the west side, they're basically that setback. We asked if they can move one of the townhomes at the Planning Commission to where it would not set back to that 8-foot setback right at one of my neighbor's back fence lines. That's cutting it very close in my mind. So I do have concerns for that. One of the other things that I wanted to bring up is I did bring up the wind. I have been in the construction industry for over 25 years. That's what my background's with my profession. I am concerned about the different concerns they talked about with safety and the bump out that they just talked about. I've seen the bump outs. I've seen how they've done bump outs on 52nd going back behind toward Costco because I take the roundabouts to get around there and go the back ways. I do have a lot of concerns for that because I think it's going to prohibit people from being able to access locations, and those kids I'm worried about too. So McIntyre, I'm very concerned about, like was stated before, that is a main entrance for everybody that lives on the east side. Also with the additional people that are going to be coming to the pool and stuff, there's a lot of concern there that we're going to have a lot of congestion. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next, Juan Gluth.
Hello, my name is Juan Gluth. I'm a resident of the Townview section of Candelas at 9534 Moss Way. I live 2 blocks from the proposed development. As a resident of Candelas, I am disappointed and not in favor of the new proposal for the increased units planned for the Townview location. I feel the increased residential units creates a public safety hazard for our neighborhood. The proposed development sits on the main entrance and exit of the Candelas neighborhood and is also the main entrance and exit to the entire Townview community. With the increased 75 residential units at the main entrance and exit, this will add significant traffic and disruption to the main artery of the community. According to the 2019 U.S. Census American Community Survey, Table S1101, the average Arvada, Colorado household size is 2.55 people. With 75 proposed units and the average household size of 2.55 people, that would be an additional 191 residents on one block that meets the main entrance and exit of the neighborhood in that little blue pocket shape on the map. Has any public safety been considered for this development? Is the Arvada Fire Department aware of this proposed development? Given this is the main entrance and exit of the neighborhood, is the City Council at all concerned of the congestion this would cause, especially given the fire hazards that exist in our community? I live 2 blocks away from this site. There are 11 units on a comparable plot of land versus 75 that is going at the main entrance of the community. It seems to me that TriPoint wants to capitalize on our beautiful and thriving community, but has no reasonable proposal for community responsibility or for public safety. I do ask the City Council, as representatives of our community, to physically see for yourselves and ask yourselves this: does this make any sense? This proposal risks exit and entry into the neighborhood with what looks to be limited public safety research that would risk the safety of existing residents. I am not in favor of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, David McCarthy Boyd. I'm sorry. I'll just say that you're here and you are against this issue. Thank you. I didn't see the check mark. Next, Michelle Finner.
Hi, I don't like public speaking, so I agree with what everyone has said. I live at 18131 West 94th Lane. I can't remember where I live now. But we live in the middle point, so we live between the 2 recreation centers, and I have only lived in the neighborhood since the end of 2020. I've never heard of any meeting discussing any of this ever. I've attended homeowner association meetings many times, but I have never been reached out to or had conversations or were invited to anything. We live far enough away that I have 4 children and 3 of them have cars, and if they were to go to the rec center to work out, they drive their cars. And of course, between my partner and myself and our 4 kids, 3 with cars, we park on the streets. So I'm deeply concerned about the parking. I would not allow my teenagers to drive down that direction once this is completed. It'll be much too dangerous. But I have another very personal concern, which is when we picked our home to where we wanted to live, we chose a place where we would be able to go to a pool and to community areas where we would be close to home. We have several children with very severe autoimmune diseases, and we do not have the ability to go to a public pool somewhere or to a public gym somewhere. Our gyms are already very packed. There's many times we cannot use them. One of our pools is consistently broken. Our homeowners association, I apologize if there's someone here from that, is useless. We have many things wrong in our community. I cannot trust the homeowners association to take care of anything. They're not going to be able to monitor parking and be able to monitor if people are parking in the right spaces. I can't get them to fix anything currently right now in the lot that's on the side of my home with holes and a broken sprinkler and everything else. So I have sincere concerns that, you know, we spent this money and moved into this home and to this beautiful community, which is already not being kept up. And then now you're going to add all these additional people going and utilizing the gyms and utilizing the pools, one of the pools which does not work. So now you've got one pool working where you have all these additional people going into the pool. So I have significant concerns about the quality of our life living there when you add in all these additional people. And when I did the math, and I could be wrong at this, I am not a mathematician, but when I'm thinking 242 parking spots and 168 townhomes, that leaves 74 spots. And then if you have 33 apartments and 2 people live in each apartment, that's 66 spots. So that's leaving like 8 to 10 open spots, which is what they confirmed. 8 to 10 open spots for retail and for restaurants and stores and for visitors who come, if any of you've lived in an apartment community, that's not going to work. There's absolutely no way that's going to work. So then everybody's going to be parking in all these additional spaces. So I really oppose it. I'm not opposed to really nice restaurants. That's what we were hoping was going to be there. But I'm opposed to this whole plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Little.
Paul Little, 9340 Nile Court. 2 years ago, you asked the developer to come back with a plan the community could get behind based on what was originally planned and communicated to the residents. You asked them to get some community support for the new plan. Although they've said they have done this, that's far from what actually happened. The plans shared in community meetings are vastly different than what the actual plan is today. Some of these plans and pictures were sent in ahead of time so you all could see what was communicated to us versus what's being presented tonight. Although they'll tell you otherwise, they chose to ignore your request 2 years ago. 553 residents have signed a petition against this plan. 34 of those provided comments on how they oppose this plan. There are also twice as many residents here in person versus 2 years ago, which we could all attend at a Zoom meeting. We did not know that was even an option for this meeting because it wasn't published. You rejected that plan unanimously, and interestingly, almost as many people as the developer just said they reached out to for this plan have signed a petition against it. And you've heard from community members that said they've never been reached out to, that are right next to this area. The response from the community just doesn't match what we've been told. The signatures from the petition and the comments were submitted to you beforehand. We hope they're part of your decision. There were also comments and a presentation that was submitted to the Development Planning Council that was submitted properly and on time that was not included in that meeting. The developer will tell you that there's adequate parking. We've talked about this ad nauseum. The retail that they are telling us will be there, there's no way. No business owner is going to put a retail shop that we want where their employees can't park and their patrons can't park. The developer said in the last meeting that everyone in the community will walk to this. It's 6.5 miles round trip from Townview to Parkview. Nobody's walking 6.5 miles. My children are 51 and 47 inches. They walk to the park and the pool and the school bus daily. They're not tall enough to see around cars. They will be walking in between parked cars on both sides of the street. The developer will tell you that this will slow parking down. I will tell you that a 5-mile-an-hour collision with one of my children will result in a tragedy. Approving this would be grossly negligent. I'm an original owner. I paid a lot premium, which is in my original real estate contract, for a 5 parks type development. Again, this isn't anywhere close to that. There's actually the talk of the need for a stoplight to be put in at the last meeting because this plan is so dense. What other residential community has a stoplight inside the suburban community? The plan is way too dense. And the affordability comment that they shared is laughable. I come from a family of school teachers. 2 public school teachers in Arvada Public Schools would not be able to afford, with today's interest rates, buying one of these properties. Thank you.
Thank you. Shane, I'm not even going to try. Thank you. You'll tell us how to say it.
I will. Hi, I'm Shane Giskus. I live at 15655 West 94th. I'm basically right across the street from this new development. There's a development at the pool, and I'm right across the street. Been there not too long, 1.5 years, but I was not notified by any means by anybody what was going on here. I got random letters in the mail saying that there was a hearing here and there that I couldn't make because I travel for work, and it was in-person hearings. I didn't get any Zoom thing, and the Metropolitan District doesn't seem to want to reach out to the residents very well. But anyway, it seems like a decent plan outside of maybe the apartments and so many townhomes. It's very congested. There's so many cars. We would love to have more restaurants and all that. Freedom Street Social's about to open. I know we're all excited about that. And there's a lot of development going on. Whisper Creek has a ton of stuff. But yeah, I also watch all these kids go to the bus stop every morning, and it'd be a tragedy for all this extra traffic to come in. 200 some extra cars probably, and all the parking and the congestion within the mixed-use areas that we have now, the park, the fitness center that doesn't have treadmills that work anyway, the pools that's always broken. That's just going to add more of those problems that no one seems to be addressing. So overall, it's that area, it would be great to have something there. Even townhouses would be great, but apartments seem greedy, especially with no parking for them. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, last name Baxter. Thank you.
Hello, I am Katura Baxter. I live at 15655 West 94th Avenue. Also directly across the street from the Townview Pool. I also, with the bus stop situation, have witnessed the busyness, especially when people come to pick up their kids. It's already congested there. People are already parking there. And then with the pool use, we already have cars parking on the side of McIntyre to get to the pool because the Parkview pool has special classes and is apparently very crowded. So most people from the Parkview area come down to the Townview area already to use our fitness center and to use our pools. And if we're adding this many families and people into this general use space, I think it's going to be too congested. And as we've already noted, it's not really kept up super well. We already have, our front lawn looks terrible and the HOA is supposed to be taking care of that. So I don't think that this development across the street is going to be cared for or taken care of as it should be. And also our current residents' quality of life will likely decrease. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Anna Smith.
I'm little. Hi, my name is Anna Smith. My address is 9540 Kendrick Way. I live in Townview as well, and I've been a resident there for quite some time. I'm very much opposed to it. My husband's a little miffed because I'm opposed to it. He's sort of okay with it, but I am very much opposed to it, and the reason being that we were promised a 5 parks type of environment, and that is not, what they're selling us is not what we bought into. Traffic there is going to be atrocious. Parking is horrible right now. We have a pool that, like everybody said, works half the time, and it's just because of the way that our developer built it. But really, my biggest concern is the safety of the community. Having these types of townhouses will definitely, it'll reduce our quality of life living in Candelas. We already have people that have RVs, very, very big RVs, and they park them for more than the allotted time. The city does not, I guess they ticket them, but then these people continue to move the RV around, which I'm sure, people that won't have a basement, will be able to, will be parking their cars outside. We're going to have RVs. We have 2 RVs already on McIntyre that stay there for quite some time. And we do have all of the kids that do frequent the rec center and the pools when it's open. I'm very much opposed to this. I'm not happy that we're here again to oppose this. And TriPoint knew what they were buying into. They can't claim ignorance. It's been in the books. If you go to Townview, they still have the little diorama that shows exactly what things are supposed to look like, and so they've known this since day one. We have a management company that is not enforcing what they're supposed to be enforcing, and so there are lots of things that are just looking really, really bad right now, and it's really affecting our way of life because there are some amenities that we can't even use half the time. I hope that you guys can really look into this, because if you go on McIntyre, both sides, I mean, even if they do this little bump out thing, it's just not enough parking, and it's a danger to the children and to the residents of our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the meeting here tonight that would like to speak that didn't sign up? All right, I will close the public comment portion of the hearing. And I know we'll give the applicant an opportunity to address some of the things that were coming up. But what I'd like to do is call for a 10-minute recess so that we can use the facilities before we get into that, and then council comments. Thank you. Come back in 45 seconds, please. As soon as we can get our city team back in here, we'll get going. On a few, Mr. Mayor, sorry, keep you waiting patiently. Back and the city manager. The deputy city managers are taking note of that. Brief recess that will allow me for sure to be able to concentrate through this next phase. So we'll give some time back to the applicant to provide any comments regarding the feedback that you got from the community.
Yeah, absolutely. Bonnie Nijelik with Norris Design. I think I wrote down the word parking at least 47 times, and I heard a lot of different numbers, and I wanted to walk through the details of it because I heard things like there's 8 parking spaces for retail, and that is just not correct. And so I wanted to walk through the details of the parking, how we are providing it, and how it meets code. So I'm going to start with the townhomes. So we have a total of 42 townhomes, and each of those per code are required 2 spaces. So every single townhome, you can see the orange boxes on the screen in front of you, has a 2-car garage. So ignore driveway spaces, ignore surface spaces. Every single townhome, just within its garage, meets the Land Development Code's parking requirement of 2 spaces per unit. The townhomes on the north side of the community have the green driveway spaces. After meeting with the neighbors, we specifically put the driveways on the north side. We previously had them on the south side in order to encourage their guests to park in their driveways instead of parking on 93rd Place, because we heard so many concerns about how much parking would happen on 93rd Place. So we specifically put guest parking for the townhomes on the north side of the community. When we get into the mixed-use buildings, the numbers we presented to you was, we said we had 2 spaces per unit for the mixed-use buildings. Within the mixed-use buildings, we have a total of 12 one-bedroom units. The city code requires 1.6 spaces per unit, which creates a requirement for 20 parking spaces. We also have 21 two-bedroom units. The code requires 2.1 spaces per unit. That's a requirement of 45 spaces. That 20 and that 45 equals 65 spaces for the apartments in the 2nd and 3rd floor of the mixed-use buildings. When we did the 2 per unit, the simpler math, that's 65 spaces, or sorry, 66 spaces. So it's 1 more than what code on its own requires. The commercial components, we have 8,300 square feet. We use 4 per 1,000 square feet. City code varies by commercial uses. An office use, for example, has 3 spaces per 1,000. A retail use, such as a restaurant, has 5 per 1,000, whereas a more of a standard service retail might have 4 per 1,000. So we use kind of that average 4 per 1,000 to simplify that math as well. So again, with our 8,328 square feet of commercial, that's 34 required parking spaces. So if you look at just the blue spaces on this map, the surface spaces for the mixed-use building, we're currently showing 106 parking spaces. We talked about we're reducing that by 4 in order to provide trash enclosures for the mixed-use buildings. So that's 102 surface parking spaces. The numbers we just walked through the mixed-use building, the 66 residential spaces, the 34 commercial spaces, that's 100 spaces. We have 102 surface spaces. The mixed-use building, just with the blue surface spaces, parks itself per the city code. On top of that, we have the brown spaces on McIntyre for additional guest parking. That could be additional retail parking, but we are 100% in compliance with the requirements in your city code for the townhomes, for the mixed-use building, including both the residential and the retail spaces. So we have way more than 8 parking spaces for those retail buildings.
Mayor Pro Tem, we'll probably go back and forth here just to address a few other issues that were brought up. I want to say as respectfully as possible, we have had terrific neighborhood involvement for the last 2 years, just like tonight. And all of these issues that have been raised, we have been working on all of these issues for 2 years. I want to say specifically as we went to, this is a slide at the end of ours that shows the plan elevation or evolution. We have adjusted all of these 6 things as specific things. I want to first talk about safety. I don't know how to implore. I have 5 and 8-year-old. There is nothing we think about more than safety of kids and pedestrians. We are bringing in residents as well. These aren't different residents. These are residents with kids. The most important thing, and you've all heard it, that people have talked about is speed. The issue is there is nothing here today. This is a gateway, and people are flying through this site. A planning ethos that we all respect. There needs to be building at the ground level to slow traffic. The most important thing we can do here from a traffic standpoint is actually to have buildings on the street, to have friction at the road to slow that traffic. But we have responded specifically. I think the neighbors are right about 93rd. So we have flipped our driveways so our residents won't park on 93rd. We have designed that specifically. We're also doing that bulb out. The other thing I will note is this is currently where the school board or the school has decided to pick up students. We are more than happy to work with them if there's a better location. They have done that because it's not developed today. It's an open area, so they brought them there. I would pretend that what we are trying to do is actually to provide better safety than is there today. We are addressing that. We have plazas on the north at 93rd and McIntyre to allow safer passage, not more congested traffic. And all of us know traffic mitigation patterns. You do things like bulb outs and plazas so you have clear connections to actually provide a street diet, a narrower street to allow pedestrian safety. So every element of this is built on pedestrian safety. I also want to say, and this is a great challenge of this site, we were here 2 years ago, Tri-Point was here 2 years ago with a lower density plan of 57 units. The council and the neighbors said, we want mixed use. You all know this very well. Mixed use and retail generates more parking and more traffic. Every engineer, every traffic study, it generates much more than residential. So we are in this incredible challenge of figuring out how to put that in there and still provide those uses. So I want to be clear, we're actually reducing the number of townhomes. It went from 57 to 42. Then we went to the market. We went first to the Metro District and said, we will give you this retail site for free. You can develop it however you want and actually make the district money. There was no interest because they didn't know if retail could work there. We then went to the market and they said, the only way is you give us the site and we have to build multifamily there as well. One of the speakers gave very good testimony about to have mixed use elements is the only way to have retail vitality. That is all we're doing is creating retail vitality. So we are adding 18 units to bring retail vitality to this site. Folks, we have worked relentlessly on community engagement. Of course, people get missed. I'm sorry if that happens. We use the Metro District. Every newsletter we sent out, we mailed people. We have had every form of meeting. And our required city meeting on November 19th, we had 25 people. We decided to do a virtual one as well in December, and we had 15 additional people. We've had 6 large community meetings and Metro District meetings. So I certainly apologize if we missed it. I do want to say and clarify the Metro District, all the discussion about what they're enforcing, we will have our own sub-HOA here. So we will have an HOA that can enforce. These are 25-foot wide townhomes, not the standard 20 feet. So we are absolutely able to enforce that the garages cannot be used for storage and you need to park in your garage. That is something we're able to do. It's something our HOA does, and we do that in many communities that we have townhomes. We also have the extra wide for the trash bins and all those things that people mention, so we still will have those 2-car garages. I do want to say, just kind of overall, we have tried to address every element, including the elements that you've heard tonight, to really make this be a safe community and still include those elements that the community wanted to see. This is based on 5 parks. This is very similar retail square footage, and this is how we want to create, how the community wanted to create this community gathering spot. We are over code on parking. We are not asking for any variances. We are completely compliant with the underlying comp plan designation and the existing ODP. We are using that. So we are coming here saying, here's what we've reflected on in 2 years, and we've tried to address each one of these issues. So I'm sure I could go through it. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I'll probably defer to you to specific questions. I think the only thing I would like to close with, and I mean this respectfully on the petition that was circulated said such things as we only had 8 parking spots for retail. It's simply not close. It's not true. It's nowhere near it. I would oppose it if we had 8 spots. You have 4 per 1,000. We have 33 spots for the retail alone. It said that we weren't concerned about safety. Our whole plan has been driven by safety. So I completely understand that if people don't know the elements, it sounds like we're trying to force something in there, when in actuality, we're really trying to reflect a community vision. So I appreciate all the sentiment. The neighbors have made our plan 100% better in every way, and we're very happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much for your comments, and now I'll open it up for council questions. Ms. Simpson.
Thank you. So first, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, regardless of your positions on this issue. I know it's not always easy to get away from your families on a Monday evening, so thank you everyone for joining us. And real quick, were you here 2 years ago? All right. You handled yourself. That was a very rough hearing. I was here. I commend you for coming back before us. That's very brave. With that, I had a lot of questions, some of which you actually addressed in your comments and your rebuttal, so thank you. So to confirm, the garages are extra wide, so there is space to do the trash bins as well as 2 cars.
Absolutely, and specifically because of those issues that were brought up, yes.
Okay, so that was my first question, thank you. So I know my colleagues will have more questions about parking. There was a great deal there. So you mentioned 65 spaces for the apartments. Are those shared at all with the retail?
So the 65 spaces that we have for the apartments are separate from the 34 spaces that we have for the retail. We haven't worked through the details of how they might be signed or things like that. I think that's stuff we can work through with the final development plan, but we did not double count any spaces.
Okay, and those will be marked and set aside specifically for the residents of the apartments?
Yeah, we don't show that in the plans, but I think we can work through those details in the final development plan.
Okay, and 65 spaces for apartments. Remind me of how many apartments there are again?
33 apartments.
33, so roughly 2 per apartment. Okay, Thank you. Moving then, 33 spots for retail. Are those in front of the businesses?
The spaces are generally behind the mixed-use building, since the buildings go right up to McIntyre Street.
Okay, but they'll be like right in front where you walk into the business directly, correct?
Yes.
Okay, how many ADA or handicap spots are there?
That, I'm gonna need to pull up a plan real quick.
Okay. So while we're waiting on that 33 spots, how many retail businesses are you envisioning? And remind me again how many square feet for commercial?
Sure, so it's roughly at 8,300 square feet for the retail. So Councilwoman, that usually retail, depending on the type of use, starts at about 1,000 square feet. Okay. So a restaurant, as you know, is probably more like 2,000 or 3,000 square feet. Mm-hmm. So I think we are looking for what you heard described, restaurants, a coffee shop, those gathering. So I think it's fair to say we really want to have a larger restaurant, and then those smaller, the coffee shop, et cetera. My guess is that leads to 4 or 5 retail shops.
4 to 5 retail shops. And then, so here's where my big concern is. One, where are the employees going to park?
Sure. So, and I'll say this as Bonnie's looking at that, as you know, your code contemplates, right, mm-hmm. In your retail parking requirement, employee parking. That's an all-in, it includes that. So your 4 per 1,000. I do want to say respectfully, I think that what we said is we hope people, many people, not all people, walk to this site. I want this to be a neighborhood coffee shop or a restaurant. So we think the traffic pattern is frankly going to change. But Councilwoman, directly, the employees are involved in that as well, in that traffic count, and we believe we're parking for them as well.
Okay, so 33 spots for 4 to 5 businesses. Every business will need probably minimum 3 people in it, up to maybe 6 or 7, 8, 9 for restaurants. So that's where my concerns start to go, in that we may not have enough commercial parking available just for the employees to serve these businesses. Moreover, I agree with you. I love the idea of a walkable restaurant. Somebody mentioned 6.5 miles for
Sure.
Candelas? Round
Yep.
trip, okay.
Yep.
So what would be roughly the longest distance for the edges of Candelas? 3 miles?
Yeah.
3 to 4 miles? Okay, thank you. I apologize. I'm an East Sider. I don't make it to Candelas very often, you guys. It's beautiful, though.
Ms. Mars?
Yeah, if we have individuals who are testifying about certain facts, if we can have them come up, just to make sure that we get things on the record, it's just something I want to ensure that we have for the record.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Morris. So just for the record, the residents informed us that it's about 4 miles walkability. So for the vast majority of people, few very physically fit, excluded, that's going to be way too far. So yes, we're going to have
Sure.
that immediate area, but a lot of those people are going to want to drive to these amenities, and they're going to be competing for the parking resources. On top of that, what are we going to do in the winter? There's going to be a lot of snow, a lot of ice. As we have noted, this is a very windy, high wind danger area that may not be conducive if it's extremely hot out. We've just had temperatures of 98, 99 degrees this past summer already, and it's only June. I know I wouldn't take my 5-year-old on a long walk in that, so I can't imagine a lot of people would. So when we hit these extreme temperatures, people still want to go out. They don't want to be trapped in their houses. But again, I find myself very concerned with the amount of parking available to visit these retail establishments. And if we don't have the necessary amenities there to be able to accommodate employees, as well as a higher traffic when it's not nice weather and people aren't walking, then how are those retail businesses going to survive?
Sure.
My biggest concern.
So a couple of things I would add. First, there are 5 ADA spots included in those parking counts, to be exact on that. Also, as you may know, there's the grocery center, more of a power center that's in Candelas today, where a lot of people will drive to, and the kind of the larger retail. We look at this as an infill neighborhood location. In no way are we suggesting that we're going to be the retail location for 3 miles each way of this. This was designed to be another neighborhood gathering place. It's an entry to one of the neighborhoods. So I think respectfully a coffee shop should do that. The other thing I would say just about retail planning in this site or mixed use planning, those are all going to have different hours. So a coffee shop is not going to compete with a restaurant, right? And that's the beauty of mixed use and having that. We're also not going to have as many residents that are there during the day when there's a coffee shop. So that's the part of the science of that. What we have thought, and Councilwoman, I completely agree with you, is we needed to exceed code and really fit that in there to have it. What is interesting is we actually hear the call for more retail, but that actually results in a lot more congestion, right? The traffic trips of driving in and out. So we've tried to find the balance of some residential that actually generates less traffic to provide that retail to have ample parking for the retail to be successful.
Okay, thank you very much for that response.
Sure.
So let's see here. Covered a lot of that. Sorry, my notes are scattered all over the place. The dumpster locations we covered, so they'll be in those 4 spots, and we covered the trash bins. Townhome yards. So these are townhomes, not condos. So theoretically, the residents own the yard space, correct? How deep are the yard spaces?
Bonnie is looking quickly at the diagram to get that for you.
Thank you. That's okay. And while we're looking at that, so the residents own, so are they responsible for maintaining the yard spaces, or is that the HOA or the Metro District?
So each of the townhome lots, it has an 8-foot front setback, so that would be the 8-foot front yard, and then it has a 6-foot rear setback, so that's kind of the apron driveway to get into your garage. And then obviously the buildings touch or the units touch within one building, and then we have, I get the number, I believe it's 15 feet side to side between buildings.
Okay, perfect. And just to be clear, it's 6 feet in the back to get your car in and out?
It's to provide an apron, kind of a driveway apron, but it also, that's where drive utilities are located, things like that, so that they're not in the front yards.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. So 8 feet, so to the second question, the owners maintain the lawns?
The HOA will maintain.
The HOA maintains
yes.
the lawns. Okay, because we heard some concerns already about the HOA maintenance, so.
That's the sub-HOA again,
Yeah.
just for this.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Very
Sub-HOA
different
just for this.
organization, yes.
They will only be maintaining these townhomes and the adjacent tracts, not other things in Candelas.
Okay, thank you. Okay, yep. And then to the safety, I do have serious concerns. They're right, children jump in and out of cars. We could say eliminate parking at that spot where the bus parks, but then we're eliminating more parking right where we're already having issues with parking. Is there any consideration of adding a flashing pedestrian sign safety crossing at this location for the children?
You know, I think we'd be more than happy to work with the city. I mean, one thing I do want to say, there was a question about fire and traffic. As you know, in your development process, all of the referral agencies have looked at this application. They have all reviewed it and did not have an objection. On the traffic specifically, they thought there was capacity. Again, we are multiple hundreds of units less than was originally planned here. So Councilwoman, specifically to that crossing, if you will, right, to get there, I think we're open to that. We did design on the northern part of both sides of McIntyre an open plaza, so there's actually true sight lines there that don't exist today. So we're actually creating a pathway, a safe passageway. If that is more appropriate from a city perspective to have like the pedestrian crossing or something like that, I think we're more than happy to have that discussion and figure that out.
Perfect. I'll yield the rest of the time to the next council member.
Thank you. And just a reminder to council, we're asking questions as opposed to giving any real feedback at this point. Mr. Mormon.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you for your presentation this evening and everyone who gave up their evening to be here with us. Thank you. My question, and I believe it's appropriate for the Arvada team to answer questions at this point too.
Absolutely.
Correct? Okay. So this may be more for the Arvada team, but it is around the parking and the comparison with 5 parks. So let's start with, what is the square footage of commercial at 5 parks?
Yes, I believe it was around 30,000 square feet.
So significantly more than what we're talking about here.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And then how does just talking about the commercial parking compare between 5 parks and what we're discussing this evening?
So the commercial parking will be comparable in terms of what exists in 5 parks today. They did shrink some buildings because they initially had a much lower parking ratio of 3.3 that was approved through the PUD process. But they never actually built out to the full size of the buildings they could accommodate there. So the parking situation is about the same, about 4 per 1,000.
Okay, and I'm a little confused on the number of, talking about off-street commercial parking. Because I thought we were talking 40, and then I was hearing 33 and 34 being thrown around this evening. So can I get clarification on exactly what we're talking about as far as commercial off-street parking?
It's 34.
Okay. Right. Okay. And has there been a traffic study done to look at the impact of traffic?
Absolutely. There was a traffic study done and went through all the referral agencies, and we've incorporated all suggestions or changes that they had.
And then, just to clarify with the apartment parking that Councilmember Simpson was asking about, am I understanding correctly that is inside the mixed-use building?
No, it's surface parking as well. I think what we were describing, and I think Councilwoman Simpson had a very good idea, is just how we were signing that. Would there be clear that this was residential parking and then retail? So in that parking area on both sides of the retail buildings, we have that space. So some is the residential and some is retail. We believe that's a great idea to sign it, so we would have that. So it is not in a structure. It is surface parking that we show in that parking plan.
Okay, because the map that I'm seeing doesn't designate between the two, correct?
That's correct, sir. And that is something that we would do in the next iteration of the plan, the final plat. We would go through that detail.
Okay. All right, I'll yield my time for now. Thank you.
Mr. Pfeiffer.
Let's see. We might jump all over, so you're just going to have to deal with that. So can you maybe explain to us what you mean that you put 2 stories of residential apartments above the retail at no cost to retail? You gave some sort of quote at the very beginning. Can you go in more detail, explain what that is?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Councilman, we don't usually talk about money and kind of a deal. I think what I was getting at is we know the community wants to see retail. They want to see a gathering place. So we've gone to the market. We actually had a full discussion about temporary when we were in COVID, about pop-up uses, food trucks, all of those things, and then permanent uses. The community said, we want to see brick and mortar. We want to trust you. So, sir, we went out to the marketplace and we said we'd love to sell these 2 in pieces to develop retail. We are a residential developer, so we went to that and we got absolutely no interest. We went to the Metro District and said, we will give you those 2 corners for free so you can develop them ultimately for retail. We then went back to the market, and Bob, or Councilman, this is what I was saying, is we then had them come back to us. A developer came to us and said, I would be willing to take that land for no basis, no charge, but even with paying no land value, we will still have to have 33 units of multifamily to make it work. You cannot build retail without those 33 units. So we are giving away those 2 parcels to develop retail here to fulfill that community vision.
You're creating new parcels that you're going to sub out to another developer?
Yes, well, they're part of that. I don't know if it's a new parcel, but they're part of our application. That's why we're showing it in that, but that will be a separate developer, yes.
Okay, so that developer is going to implement your plan?
That's correct, yes. And what we believe or hope is the community vision of that.
And what was your thought process to have the Metro District, who is a form of government, run retail?
Sure.
It's like asking the city to go and say, we run Costco.
Yeah, sure, sir. So what we looked at was more of a discussion about, like we would think of a traditional TIF deal. Is there a way that we could provide this to the Metro District as just value and say, if you want to have an RFP in 2 years when the market comes back and actually sell to a different developer and that. So I don't think, sir, we ever thought the Metro District would run that or run retail. We were actually giving them the parcel so we could assure the neighbors that there would be retail development. They didn't want to do that. Perfectly acceptable. We thought it was a good question to ask them, but they led us to a few other retail developers that we then were able to cut this deal with.
I'm sure the city can always use the land if you just want to give it away.
That's right.
I'm sure we can think of a lot of uses. We have an evidence room we need. That's right. Sorry, sarcasm comes out of me once in a while. The team here knows that. All right, so that deals with the zero cost. We talked about parking, commercial. So let's talk about the trash.
Sure.
So it sounds to me that you completely forgot about trash until after some residents complained about what are you going to do with trash for commercial, because you even implied that in your testimony. So you quickly came up with a design. It looks like you're putting the trash facing Candelas Parkway. Is that accurate on, if I looked at the site map?
Yes, sir.
Can we get the picture of your
Sure. I
parcel?
think probably
Can we pull that up, please?
35 maybe shows that.
Or Kevin? Yeah, thank you, Kevin. So on the buildings that say 1, so south is obviously towards Candelas Parkway. That shaded area is, I think, some covered parking. Is that what that is? And I think there's, if I recall correctly off your other drawings, there were 6 spots in each one of those? And you're going to take away 2 out of each one. So the orientation kind of throws me a little bit here. So maybe what we need to talk about is you have trash facing a major street. What's the plan? Or even so, let's talk about activation of that corner, because it looks like you're activating 93 to be the gathering spot, when typically, like any type of most place of gather that's a central location.
Sure.
You would usually put retail to be successful closer to the higher car counts.
Yeah.
So maybe you can wrap into that this comment of building orientation, activating towards Candelas Parkway versus the way you did it, because I think it's kind of odd to me to put parking right at a very important corner, as well as showing trash bins as an entrance to these residents.
Sure. So a couple of those, and I'll let Bonnie, as a planner, go through it. I think you know this very well, certainly how you turn in there onto McIntyre. We are probably 40 or 50 feet minimum from Candelas Parkway where you're showing that. So there's the tree lawn, the sidewalks, the landscaping, one row of parking, then the drive aisle, and then the row of parking where we're adding the trash bins. So we just had not planned out all the details of the trash. We hadn't forgotten about that. Again, just in a general PDP, you don't usually have that. So we wanted to address that issue. We actually worked very closely with Waste Management and Republic and called them and talked about where it would work and how the turning radius. So we actually thought that tucked around and actually was removed from existing residents. We actually thought that was better to pull our trash trucks into our site instead of on 93rd or Kilmore where they are adjacent to trucks, or to residents. So we actually thought that was much more responsive to pull them into our site on the retail. So that's something that we also wanted to have there, is have that be part of the retail and or apartment building there to service it right there. The townhomes will act like any other property and will have their trash pickup just like other residents would have.
Yeah, I'm more focused on the retail side,
Yes,
and the the apartment complex, because you still didn't answer the question of building orientation. I don't get why we're activating 93rd and McIntyre and activating Candelas Parkway.
Yep, I'm happy to answer that. So I think going back to 2008, when this plan was originally, the ODP was originally created, this furthest eastern portion of filing 1 was envisioned to be a traditional neighborhood design. This mixed-use parcel was the neighborhood retail component of that TND neighborhood. It was never intended for this commercial to support all of Candelas. We certainly don't expect people to walk 3 miles, 4 miles to go to this coffee shop. That's why there's commercial on 93rd or 93. That's why there's commercial on Indiana. The commercial here at McIntyre and 93rd was intended to be walkable, so maybe a half mile, a 10-minute walk from the neighborhood right here at this TND. From a building orientation perspective, the reason we push it up towards 93rd was, again, trying to create that neighborhood retail component. You're absolutely correct. With commercial, we typically put it on arterial streets when it's more regional commercial types that we are expecting people to drive to. But since this is a more neighborhood commercial type, we want it to be kind of tucked in a little bit more and activated around that rec center. Basically, that McIntyre and 93rd intersection is kind of main and main of this T&D neighborhood within Candelas. So creating the plazas, creating the activation on 93rd, and then providing, there's additional landscape screening, things like that along Candelas Parkway. Since there's more traffic, we want to, again, protect pedestrians, create screening along Candelas Parkway, and really activate that corner next to the rec center where there's already great activity happening.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have comments about that later. So let's talk about height. So why do you need two-story townhomes to be 35 feet?
That's just what the code allows, sir.
But that's what you're testifying, is that you said what the code said, and you said, we're doing this. You've been very clear that you are doing 35 feet. You said code's this, height we're doing is 35 feet. And you also said in your testimony that the mixed retail, even though it's 3 stories, you said the code says 50 feet, but we're doing 45 feet, which, why are you doing 45 feet for 3 stories?
So kind of going from top down, so the ODP allows us to do 50 foot for the mixed use buildings and 35 foot for the townhomes. The preliminary development plan is kind of the middle of 3 steps if you're going from an ODP, a PDP, and FDP. The PDP is establishing what our maximum that we're allowing within the PDP. So that's the 45 feet for the mixed-use buildings and the 35 feet for the townhomes. Within the detailed elevations within the PDP, we're showing heights lower than that. And the final development plan, when staff reviews it, will need to align with the maximums and match the drawings that we're showing in the PDP. So the PDP kind of acts as like overall development standards, not necessarily every specific thing that we're going to do. And I think staff could probably clarify that better than I could, but yeah, it's kind of that middle step.
But height needs to be really defined in here for us to get behind. I don't care what you do with staff after here. I mean, because I've found that there's some developments that have happened that have, I'll be honest with you, I said, oh crap, that's a lot bigger than we anticipated, and we allowed this imaginary line to be within our code, and that's not compatible with the community. So that's why I'm asking these questions is 45 feet and 35 feet is about a third higher than any surrounding house and almost double on some of the houses in that corner. So I want to be really, 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 really clear of what height, because you're looking at double the height of the house across on 93rd
So sir,
place.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt at all. So sir, that's right. We were trying to answer what we said is correct. What would be in the PDP are those height limits. I just want to be clear on our townhomes. They are 2-story homes, right? So they will be just like an adjacent 2-story home that is there today. So we just have to establish that envelope. I know what you're saying. I don't know if we have that exact height we're looking right now to show you what that is, but we are going to be under those height limits that are established in the PDP.
Okay. Well, while we're talking about retail, maybe you can share some backdrop. Last time TriPoint was here,
sure,
it was crystal clear by TriPoint to us that you are only a residential builder. You've mentioned that in today's testimony as well. What's changed? You just got into with another developer. What changed in that relationship? I don't understand how we got here, because TriPoint said they wouldn't do this.
Well, that's right, sir. So we listened and we went back to the market, to the community, to understand what that mixed-use component was, and then we went and found a development partner that does only retail so they could do that. So we are not developing that retail or the apartments, because that's not what we do. You're absolutely right. So we are partnering to bring that vision forward. I think that would be true unless this was like a transit-oriented developer. That would always be the case. You'd have a residential developer and a retail. So, sir, all that changed is we went out and found a partner to work on that as well.
Okay. And then the west-facing part of the property, you said you're putting a 6-foot privacy fence.
Sure.
If I remember correctly on the overall master plan for Candelas, privacy fences are only allowed in the perimeter of that community, not within the perimeter. So
Right.
Why is there this, because to me this is an exception to those rules within Candelas, so why is this happening now, or why are you proposing a 6-foot privacy fence there versus just get rid of the house that's probably causing the problem?
Well, we were asked specifically by the neighbors to have a privacy fence. So that is actually in direct reaction to what they asked. You are right, sir, that we already have asked the Metro District if we could go through that process of having that. So we want to provide a better buffer. We're also offering to put trees in their existing yards and then do planting on our sides to provide that. So we were doing that simply as a way to protect or buffer those neighbors. As you know, immediately north and east of this site on Kilmer, existing homes built in the neighborhood are actually much closer than we're proposing. Homes against the back of a home, against the side of a home. That's how this community is designed on the corners. But we understand they should have that setback, that they want to have that. We oriented so it's the side of the house, and we're landscaping so they can have all the privacy that they can get. So that was a request of the neighbors.
So there's any, you know, can we bring the property maps back up, Kevin?
Sure.
Let's just keep it up while we talk through it. So on the western, which is on the left side, that northwestern unit, the corner of that building is how far from the property line? You said 8 feet, I think?
Go ahead.
The very smallest pinch point is 13.4 feet. It's not 8 feet.
It's
13.4.
13.4 from the corner of the building. Because
perpendicular to the closest property line.
Okay, so 13 point, okay. So what's the standard, was that considered a side or front?
It's the side.
Is that side? Okay. So side is what, 15 feet? Sorry, you got?
13.4.
No, but what's our code say? Is it 5 feet? 5 feet.
Yes,
That
5
darn
feet.
5 feet. Okay. And then the retail, sorry, again, thanks for just bearing with me as I jump around. Go back to retail now. We're going to swing back over there. That retail will be restricted to commercial retail, right? Because I've been in one of these switch and baits where all of a sudden it's now somebody's loft.
Sure. I don't know, and I'm sorry, I don't know if we've restricted that per the use. You're saying instead of like a...
Yeah, I mean, we've run across these mixed use where
Sure.
I won't name the development, but
Okay.
they commercial was supposed to be at the bottom and they ended up turning it into an extra bedroom to their facilities.
Yeah, so I think you're right. We cannot have that residential use, sir. You're right about
Yeah,
that.
so it's
I don't know if
restricted.
we've specifically enumerated the type of retail,
Yeah.
but it cannot grow. And you're absolutely right. That's why we're doing the comp plan, is to allow that mixed use
Okay.
form and to have that retail.
Okay. So let's get into the traffic side, because I think density drives this traffic issue. That's why I think we should think really hard about the density here, because density does have that effect to traffic. But in light of that, are you planning to escrow a traffic light there? Is that the situation?
We have not had, and I can ask our engineer, again, we put in our full traffic studies. There was discussion that someday the background traffic, right, could grow, and that may in the future trigger a light there, but that would not be caused because of our development. So I don't believe we've been asked to escrow funds for that, sir, if that was the discussion, but we're not triggering a light at that intersection.
So speaking of the traffic study, I mean, you know, usually we get some data around that. Apparently, we don't have that for this testimony.
We're more than happy to answer any questions you have about that.
Can we get the report?
Sure. This is our traffic engineer, and I'll have him talk, maybe if that's okay, in general terms about it, and then answer any specifics you have.
Yeah, we should have a copy of it and for the public to see versus you verbally telling me.
From staff's perspective, we do have a preliminary traffic study that was submitted with this preliminary development plan, and we have reviewed that. We will get a final traffic report with the final development plan as it goes to the next stage. With the preliminary traffic plan, it did show that a signal would be warranted at Candelas Parkway and McIntyre Street in 2045. based on background traffic, and we will ask for a contribution fee from this developer for that.
Okay, thank you.
That negotiation typically comes with the final development plan, so we're not quite there yet.
Yeah, and we don't get to see that, and then we kind of go back and ask what the hell happened. But what would be nice, usually we've seen some of these more dense traffic put into our packets, but I haven't seen this. So if you want to give us an overview, that'd be great.
Yes, good evening, council members, Mr. Mayor. I'm Curtis Rowe with Kimley Horn and Associates. Address is 4582 South Ulster Street, Denver, Colorado 80237. And so, yes, that's correct. We prepared a preliminary traffic study. The traffic volumes generated by this development work acceptably. There are actually no capacity improvements needed to accommodate traffic volumes with this development. The only thing is that long-term horizon, as Jenny mentioned, by 2045, if traffic volumes continue to grow on Candelas Parkway, there's a possibility for a need for a traffic signal at that intersection. But otherwise, traffic movements in and out work fine. We're talking about 1 car every minute on average during the peak hour in the morning, and 1 car every 45 seconds or so in the afternoon peak hour. So, 75 units of residential. As you know from looking at development applications, this is a relatively small development. 8,000 square feet of commercial is relatively small too. So the traffic volumes will work operationally.
Okay.
Councilmember Pfeiffer, I just wanted to offer an option as well. If you do feel like you need to see that traffic study in order to make your decision, and that's an essential piece of information for you, please let us know and we can talk about that from a procedural perspective.
Okay. And if you have a record of it, right? Okay. All right. Thank you, Rachel. So we went through trash, the HOA.
No.
No. Yeah, not during.
Sorry.
Unfortunately,
I'm sorry.
We'll come back to it, but unfortunately we can't have that kind of conversation with the audience. The HOA, when you deal with the HOA, I mean, these folks are going to pay not only their mills being in the Metro District, but they're also going to pay the HOA. How is the apartments, are they paying an HOA as well, or is that just a whole separate part of your deal with that other company?
Sir, if you could come to the microphone.
Yeah.
Dan Galasso, 5350 South Roslyn Street, Unit 400, Greenwood Village, Colorado 80111. Yes, they will have to pay. The building owner will have to pay not only the mills, but a portion of the HOA fee to support their portion of the improvements and the maintenance.
And will the folks that are renting, do they have access to the Metro District amenities?
Yes, they would.
Okay. Okay, and okay, so I think I'm okay there. I will go back to what they said about the study of the traffic. I do want to know the date of when it was. That's a good point, because if it's during COVID,
yep,
that's a whole different other story.
So the question is a fair one, and Councilman, you heard it. They asked, when did we do the traffic study if it was done during COVID? Our initial study was during the COVID. Specifically, because of that reason, we updated it in November of 21, so it was after that time period. So we are completely outside of that time period. Most cities have also agreed, kind of understanding the background traffic. So again, it shows 2045 when this light would be there, and all levels were acceptable. So we were very cognizant of the COVID timeline.
Okay, thank you. The driveway, I see the driveway width is 18 feet. You're saying the townhouses are 25 feet. The garage doors must be 20 feet. Because these alley entrance, I'll tell you, I can tell you which builders really suck at doing this stuff and which ones do really good, and they happen to also be in Candelas. So we need to make sure that people do not want to use their driveways because they can't make the radius to pull into their garage without taking out their mirrors. And I'm sure we're following code and we're saying 20, but let's be logical, because I've seen buildings just in the area that people are not using the garage because they're afraid to pull it in.
Yeah, your standard garage is 16 feet wide at the door. The driveway is 18 foot wide, which gives you a foot on either side of the door. Our garages, once you get inside, are the width of the unit. The width of the unit is, it's 25 minus your walls, right? So to be perfectly transparent, but it's close to 25. It's 24 feet and change, which gives you enough room to park 2 cars, plus room for storage and trash bins and
Okay.
whatnot.
Okay, and what's the length of the driveway? Is it to code, I guess? I can't remember what code says.
Yep, it's 18 feet.
18 feet? Okay. Okay, thank you. And then you mentioned utilities and pedestals. This has been a kick of mine. I'm sure some of the staff will get a kick out of this. Are the pedestals like put at everyone's front door like some other communities do, or are they going to be put somewhere kind of at least where they're nice if you were to get approval? Or
They're not. We've planned on banking the meters. That's going on in our current development in Amendment 5 right now, and that's what we would do here. The meters would be banked on the sides. There would be transformers and pedestals in the back along the alley.
Cable and all them, just kind of get them in one area versus the front areas?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I think from Lauren's questions, so going back to the parking of the retail, if you're doing 4 spaces per 1,000 feet and a restaurant's 2,000 to 3,000 feet, that's 12 parking spaces. You have employees and you're only doing 12 tables. I know it sounds like there's churn based on the type. I know you can't commit to us on who's going to be there because we might say restaurants. We'd all love to have restaurants out west, but there may not be a restaurant there. So, that's a gamble because I do agree with some of the employees finding their parking. A restaurant, I can't see a restaurant having 12 tables. They can't survive that way. I'm thinking of Lot 1 over in, what they had to do to make sure their businesses stay alive.
So I was giving an anticipation of how many retail locations we would have there. So first of all, we have a terrific retail partner that I think understands that mix very well. One thing I do want to say that I think is important to think about on those is we do think it's a mix of a neighborhood. I think there will be a lot of people that walk to this location. This isn't meant to be a big brew pub. This is meant to be a neighborhood family restaurant that we attract those to. So I think the turnover, you're right, is important there. I think also staggering those uses. We are above code. I know you're like, we still have to think more about that. But this destination, this is neighborhood service retail. This is not a drive-to destination in the same way. And what's interesting about all the testimony you've heard, this is the gateway. Everybody comes through this site. We think we're going to have a lot of people coming into this site as they come home at night and so forth. The last thing I'll say, and I always feel badly about this, but the retail developer is as selfish as possible about parking. They have to have parking to make it work, and we think this parking ratio works. Retail does not work without parking, and this is the right amount, we believe, to make this retail work. So we have such a shared common interest to have ample parking. If we don't have parking, it doesn't work. So we are very selfish about protecting those spaces, and we believe this is absolutely the right ratio.
But didn't you say that you needed all those 33 units to try to compensate for the tough retail market right now?
Sure.
So how does that play into what you just said?
It plays everything into it. Retail, there aren't enough just residence rooftops. As you know, you need to have those rooftops. We need people that are actually living above this that go down every day to get coffee. Right? We need people living there that are actively doing that. So we actually need that from more of a population basis to have it. And sir, that's just a pro forma. We couldn't get standalone retail here, we don't believe, for 10 or 15 years. We have gone out, we've tried to give it away. So people are wanting true mixed-use retail, which is remarkable, right? We're going to deliver mixed-use retail, the type we all want to see in Arvada, what we describe at 5 parks, and we were able to do that by being very creative here to allow a use that's allowed. This is an old multifamily use zone district. To have that only add 18 units and still provide that mixed use experience for the residents.
Okay. I think I have one last question. Sorry, I wrote a whole bunch of notes. Hey, so on the 5 parks, you said 30,000 square feet of commercial. Is that both floors? Because some of that's residential.
Yeah, there are 2 buildings that have 2 full floors of retail. Those on the west side. On the east side, the second floor is residential units. So I believe there's 12 residential units. but that includes all the retail / commercial in
The
ground
30,000
floor or the 2 floors.
And the
in the other
30,000
building.
includes the residential on the other side as well?
It does
No,
not.
it does not.
That
It
does
does
not.
not. So
Does
it's
not.
just purely commercial?
That's just purely commercial.
Okay.
yes.
All right. Okay, that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Ms. Simpson, before I go to you, I want to make sure we've got, if the mayor or Mr. Marriott or Ms. Smith, Mr. Marriott?
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. I have just a couple clarifying questions, kind of about the operation of the residential and retail components together. So, is the plan for those to be under single ownership always, or is there a way that that's dictated, or is that not possible?
We are planning that under single ownership of those buildings.
Okay. And are there established, I mean, I know you've identified a potential developer to build it, but are there established real estate entities who run buildings like this, and you feel like you have a shot at being able to have something like that happen?
Absolutely. We went specifically to the retail development community. This is a very common infill neighborhood retail scale building. So yes, this is, I think, a common practice. As you saw, what we thought was important to have the leasing at the ground floor and then all the residential living above it to really activate the street to provide that vitality. So this is a very common form of true mixed-use retail.
Okay. And you know, I can see this as frankly, a really tough retail environment. Whoever takes ownership of this, they'll be solely on the hook for the success of this. So they'll have the proper motivation to try to fill those retail spaces.
Yeah, and you know, sir, I think you're very observant, and I'm not trying to underscore, that's how hard we've worked to try to build that. What we actually think is important is the multifamily necessitates the building of this and provides for that gathering place we've always wanted. If there isn't multifamily above this, that retail doesn't get built, and it doesn't get built for a long time. So we actually think this form allows us to actually deliver it to the community today. So yes, they're on the hook, but that multifamily is really what drives the performa, right? So that's what actually is allowing this to happen, is to have that. So we actually think this provides tremendous protection for the community. That's why we've gone to such lengths to detail the plans so they know how we can bring that form forward.
Okay. With the design of these buildings and the construction of these buildings, there's no possibility for these to be live-work, or they're not intended to be live-work units where there's connectivity between the ground floor retail and the residential above it?
That's correct. It's true commercial on the ground floor.
Okay. So true commercial, separated. They probably even have separate entrances for the two.
I don't think there's not a stair that connects a commercial space to a residential space above it.
Right. Okay. And just to be clear, the townhome development there, those are intended to be sold individually. They're not.
That's correct. They would be sold for sale townhomes and then for rent apartments.
For rent
you are
apartments.
correct. Yes.
Okay. Got it. I think that's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to check to see if you have any clarifying questions.
I do, but I'll allow Ms. Smith to go first if she has anything.
Sure. So, did you talk with the HOA and did you get the feedback, like the board? What did they say?
So, Councilwoman, as I recall or went through the process, so we worked a lot with the Metro District, right? So that's what we worked with more commonly. I think there, and I'm sorry, I don't know that, I think they serve as an HOA as well. Yeah. So we worked, yes, directly. We actually had 2 presentations to the Metro District Board itself. The first, just the overall plan, and then that second time when we went back with the request, do you want this land to develop it someday or to sell the land? So we met directly with them. I think we were very clear that we would always have a sub-HOA. So we went through a lot of those issues to try to figure out, were there other traffic mitigation things that they could, suggest or be part of. Frankly, it became something that we thought we needed to be responsible to the community and be a standalone. So we'll always have our own HOA that can dictate all of those things that we're promising.
Awesome, thank you. And you mentioned quite a few times about wanting to be a walkable area or a bikeable area. But what bike initiatives, I saw there was 2 racks and that was it. So has there been discussion of kind of prompting more bike paths, make it more safe, more bike spots?
Sure.
Because I'm also seeing that in the townhome areas, there's nothing for bikes either.
I'm trying to find the total bike parking. I'm seeing
think it's
just on
16.
McIntyre Street, on the east side of McIntyre Street, we have 4 bike racks, which would host 8 bikes in those 4 racks. I believe there's at least one on the other side of McIntyre Street as well. And then additionally, with those wider garages, people in the townhomes could certainly park their bikes in their garages as well. But let me see if I can get what that total bike parking is, because I think it is a little bit more than that.
Okay. Has there been any discussion with your team about any EV charging stations? We're kind of looking at future builds, and I didn't see anything in the plan.
I don't know that we have that yet, and I'm going to defer to staff. I think that would come in our final plan. We are starting to get that request. Actually, if there's the opportunity to provide some more bike racks that fit in that, to go back to that, we're happy to do that, and also we can look at that charging station. I think we're starting to see that in most of these kind of infill locations.
And just to confirm, 93, there's a residential entrance, so even though you moved the parking spots behind, there's still an entrance in the front. So it's not mitigating fully that kind of parking concern of on-street parking.
So, go ahead, please.
I think, I think you're asking if there's a vehicular entrance on McIntyre?
No, an entrance for a human, not a car.
Oh, sorry. On 93rd. For the mixed-use buildings? Sorry.
For the town, you got it. So for the townhomes, when you're looking at 93rd,
yes,
there is a pedestrian, a person entrance.
Yes, that's your front door. Yes.
Right, okay.
Yes, front door and walk to the sidewalk along 93rd. Sorry.
You got it. So you mentioned at the start of your presentation about how this will help with the missing middle.
Sure.
And so I'm just wondering what those townhomes are looking to start at.
Yeah, I'll be happy to see if we have kind of a similar product. I'll just say, right, as you all know, the primary form in Candelas is a single-family home, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we will be substantially more attainable, and then to have the for-rent product as well in the 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom. So we do really think we're addressing that kind of spectrum of housing, the missing middle. But let me get you an answer kind of where we think those will come in at from a price point.
We currently have a similar product out in Sterling Ranch. It starts in the mid-4s.
Okay.
It's hard to say where pricing is going to go with interest rates. We've already seen a lot of discounting taking place and things like that. So it's hard to say where pricing goes in 2 years when we deliver this product.
Thank you. And for the team, I'm wondering if there's any general knowledge about the safety, or, you know, we think we can see accidents in those areas or reported traffic incidences. I'm sure you don't have it off the top of your head, but.
I'm not aware of those accidents. I know that we've had people say that, but I haven't been able to validate that with our folks.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all the questions I had.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much. Can we pull up the slide again that shows the parking configuration?
Slide 23, I believe.
It actually showed where you were showing that you had the park. There you go, that's the one, thank you. So I appreciate that you've got guest parking on the driveways for the north buildings. Where are guests supposed to park for the south buildings?
Sure. Yes, sir. So we have, that was kind of the width of that, so we could accommodate a full driveway. On the north side, we did that because of the 93rd Avenue or 93rd Place question. We wanted to be sure and not burden 93rd, so we provided that. On the south side, we don't have additional guest parking. We do have, as part of the overall parking calculations and what's required, some guest parking that's built into that. So that would be, I think that's labeled 5. That's just kind of above us there. So there is some parking, but we are meeting, as you know, code by having that in the garage spaces, the 2 per unit.
I assume there's no tenants that are pre-leased at this point?
That is correct. We do not have any pre-leased tenants.
And you're going to have as a condition of approval that the sub-HOA will require that there'll be no storage in the garages?
Yes, sir.
Address, if you would, a concern I've got is that a little bit of fear that the retail developer you're working with is willing to take on these two sites because they're going to get the apartments, and frankly, the apartments are going to sufficiently subsidize this that the retail could sit empty for an extended period of time before anything ever comes in on a retail perspective. Can you respond to that fear?
Yeah, sure. I think that's thank you, Mayor, for the question. I think I was kind of talking about the overall pro forma that without those residential units, I don't think that retail happens. We actually are working specifically with a retail developer that's more focused on the retail. That's just part of the pro forma. So I understand your concern, but that has driven this whole discussion is to bring retail to that site. So, sir, I'm not sure how to condition that or say it. What we wanted to do is actually have a mixed-use form, so we had to provide that retail. What we heard 2 years ago when the team was here was we want there to be commercial and commercial to grow into this neighborhood, and we think this form is going to deliver it. Frankly, as you've heard those numbers and you've heard people talk about it tonight, this makes perfect sense for a local neighborhood coffee shop and restaurant. I think this is actually really going to grow into that little corner retail that we always want to see here. So, sir, I don't know how to say that other than retail is what is driving this, not the multifamily. That's just a reality of the pro forma.
Is this retail developer sufficiently have experience in terms of the apartment aspect of it, or are they going to need some other apartment developer to take on that part of it?
Yeah, no, good, fair question. Again, yes, good experience, great experience, is a resident of Five Parks, knows the area very well, has actually really studied the Five Parks plan to see what has worked. Again, I think that form, that 2 or 3 or 4-story building, a very common, as you know, infill retail development, it works right now in kind of isolated locations like this. It wouldn't work in the power center, but it works here. They have the experience as well on the residential form.
That's all the questions I have, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Ms. Simpson.
Thank you. So actually, the mayor touched on my number one question, which was that if the retail didn't come, is there a potential that the developer, you guys, or whoever your partner is going to come back to us asking to convert that then into residential?
Yeah, so I think we have some remarkable neighbors, and they wanted the certainty that this couldn't come back as all residential. So what we've done tonight in asking for the comp plan change is we are asking for mixed use form, so that's the only form that was allowed. So Councilwoman, I guess theoretically somebody could come back, but they'd ask for a comp plan change and and go through the whole process with you all again. So we wanted to provide that certainty, so we're creating a form that limits us to that mixed use, so we cannot come back and say we just want to have only residential.
Okay, great. And then can we get the parking map back up again? We really shouldn't even take it down. So then you mentioned area 5 is potentially where the guest parking is, yes?
Verify that. I'm sorry, I couldn't see the numbers, so.
Yeah, the numbers on this map are showing how many spaces are within that colored bubble.
Okay. And so on this west side, that's where the dumpsters are going to be in those spaces?
So the trash enclosures are on the south side of each mixed-use building.
Okay. And then, so on this east side then, these 6 units that don't have a driveway, where's their guest parking?
So again, we have a couple of extras, the surface spaces between the commercial, the mixed use, the ground floor of the commercial, the second and third floor apartments, and the trash. There's still a couple of spaces, so some of those could be used for guests. And then we have the on-street parking on McIntyre. So again, the land development code, it doesn't have separate requirements for guest parking. I believe that is because the parking ratios are accommodating for all that stuff.
Okay. Thank you. Then I'll reserve the rest for comment. Oh, actually, no, apologies. One last one. Snow removal. We get some hefty snow tides over there. I'm assuming the HOA is managing snow removal. Is there a place to stack snow, or does it need to be hauled away?
We are working through those details right now. The HOA would be responsible for that. You're absolutely right. So we will coordinate that. I'm sorry, I don't know if I know that location right now. Those details we are working out, but we probably would accommodate that. Bonnie is looking.
Yeah, I'm trying to find, we usually often hatch these, but what we do from a landscape perspective is kind of at, whether it's ends of aisles or adjacent to kind of more open spaces, we are very thoughtful about what kind of plants we put in those locations. So plants that can tolerate a little bit of salt or a little bit of snow weight on those, so that we're not just putting heavy snow on nice perennials or whatever it might be. So it's accommodated within the landscape plan to make sure that there is areas to put the snow without harming the landscape that's proposed.
Okay, even for a significant snowstorm of, like, say, 6 feet, because those happen.
I don't think we have enough for 6 feet of snow. Okay. Those apocalyptic moments, we have other challenges too. So any general snow we would plan for within the landscape plan.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Pfeiffer. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So a couple more questions that came up. One is, I see one of the building, about 75% of it is all, the commercial floor is dedicated to the apartments. I don't know which one that one is, but it's building number 2. And it shows a manager's unit, which is taking about a third of the floor. And then you have a community room. You know, if we're talking about commercial down below, I mean, I don't think we anticipate that the apartments management and leasing offices would take 75% of a building.
So we do show on our proposed architecture, which is slide 17, that we would probably have that. That's if you think of a leasing at any apartment building that's on multiple floors, they would have to have the entrance, right? That kind of gathering place for them to then go into the residential units. So we would want to activate the ground floor with leasing. So I'm not questioning that you're trying to say we're taking over that. That's just how we engage the street for the leasing, right? So that acts that way. Then the rest of the buildings and the second building would be retail.
And just to expand on that, that's not part of the 8,300 square feet of commercial.
It's not.
It's not. If we can go to one of the site plans.
Yeah, page 26 of your drawings is what I'm looking at. But I don't know if we'll see it on your PowerPoint.
Can we go to, slide 23? So the western building is all, this one's probably not the best one. It's all that pinky peach color. So that is, I think it's 5,500 square feet of commercial. And then the east side, most of it is kind of that pinky peach color. And then there's a little bit of a pale yellow on the south end of the eastern mixed use building. That's where that leasing is. And so that is the 2,800 square feet. That gets us to the 8,300 square feet.
Yeah, I don't know if that's proportional to your actual architectural drawings, because the building number 2 shows 75% of it is manager's unit, community room, residence lobby, stairs.
I'm going to have our architect come up and
So I'm just trying to understand, if we're trying to ask for commercial on the first floor and you're taking almost the whole first floor for apartments, that kind of defeats activating multi-use on both sides of the road, or commercial.
Hi. Alex Duran with Godin Civic Architects. 5975 South Quebec Street, Centennial. The square footages that they give are of the retail space, but yes, in the one building, well, in both buildings, there is a resident lobby, along with circulation, vertical circulation of stairs and elevator. The one building that has the community space is what was really given for like the HOA in the neighborhood to use for community areas. But the square footages that were given are of the retail space for each floor total. Okay. So she said, 55 and 2,800 between the two buildings.
Okay, so one building is only 25% commercial on one side and the other side is
Yeah, I don't know the percentages offhand, but the square footages are accurate.
The square foot, we still are delivering the 8,300 square feet of retail. That number that we have been talking about and parking for, that is still in those buildings, right? There is some that's carved out for that, as we described, the amenities in the leasing center, but we are still delivering that 8,300 square feet of retail.
And then going back to trash, I don't get if you're trying to do restaurants or anything, what are you doing about grease traps and all that other stuff? Because the way you've designed these, I'm going by drawings, so this is whatever you submitted.
Sure.
You know, you can say it's one thing, but I'm going by drawings. I don't know how the trash and where the retail or commercial is. How does that look? I mean, because you're having people roll their trash all the way through the parking lot over to that one end of the building, grease trap, and then also I still don't understand how you're going to get these trash trucks to pull into that little parking spot area to pull that out.
So again, we worked with trash companies to talk specifically about how to do that in these retail mixed-use environments. I think what is difficult, and you're right, you're looking at that, as we work with the restaurant, you know, maybe it makes perfect sense for them to be, you know, closer to that. But I'll just say in a mixed-use environment of a 3-story building, this is how trash works. Mm-hmm. It works on the edge of one of the buildings, and all of those buildings, we're talking about the equivalent of 2 units, residential units, walking to a trash dumpster. That's a very common for any main street or kind of neighborhood infill. So this is kind of a common a way that you would handle the trash. So I know it feels, and I've heard you about Candelas Parkway, right? Kind of how we have that in there. We actually thought that was really important from a planning commission. Neighbors talked about they didn't want to have it right there in front of them. So we've done that. And as you know, sir, there's no parking on Candelas Parkway. There's no engagement there. So our retail is engaging McIntyre because you can't park in front of it on Candelas. So we want that there. So this is effectively back of house, and that would be appropriate for where our trash would be.
Yeah, I know that when you take a restaurant and taking out the trash, all the sidewalks get horrible. They get full of grease. I'm not seeing the logistics in here, so I just wanted some information around that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
All right, so the benefit of having them all ask their questions first, I only have 1 or 2. So we'll keep it on this slide. So looking at the east side of the development, the drive line that goes to Kilmer Way, what's the traffic study around the cut-through traffic? And there's no sidewalk through there for someone to pass safely if they went out of their garage to then either proceed to Kilmer or to the retail. So what did the traffic study say about that pass-through traffic on that drive lane?
You want to adjust that? We'll get that answer.
Hello again. Yes, Curtis Rowe, Kimley Horn. To answer that question, you're looking at the farthest east, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So really the only traffic that we anticipate using that driveway are from those residences right along that stretch. Depending on where you park, there'll be more traffic assigned to the driveway that's shown there to the west. You can see that there's a direct link up to 93rd. And so from a distribution standpoint, it's probably 80% of the traffic there at the 93rd access and then 20% there on Kilmer.
Okay. And then, sorry to go back to trash. I thought I heard early that, again, looking at this where the number 2, again, we'll just use the east side, where the number 2 is, that's designating the 2 parking spots. I thought that's where you said the trash containers were going to go.
Right now, we're planning for them to be on the south side of the mixed-use building. Yep, whoever that arrow, yep.
Okay. Well, okay, that's what I've been hearing, but I heard early on that it was somewhere else. And so I just wanted to clarify that that's where.
Sorry about that.
Okay. No, it was my fault. All right, those are all the questions that I have. So now I'll open it up for council action and comments.
Council, Mayor Pro Tem Jones, before you guys get into that portion of the hearing, if it's okay, I'd just like to offer a few reminders for council. So you've heard a lot of information tonight. You've received a lot of testimony. You have a lot of information in your packet. And as we move towards decision making, it's important to keep in mind that all decisions made by council tonight must be connected to the applicable criteria. And those are the criteria that are found in pages 7 through 9 of your staff report. You'll also be able to find those criteria on the cover sheets of your public packet for each of these agenda items. So for instance, if you end up voting yes on the application, you would need to articulate why you believe the criteria have been fulfilled and a general reasoning behind that. Alternatively, you can also, if you're voting yes on the application, indicate that you agree with the reasoning in the staff report. If you vote no on the application, you would need to identify one or more criteria that you believe have not been met, and generally describe, again, the reasoning behind that decision. So with that quick reminder, if you have any questions about that, please let me know, but otherwise, I am done with that quick reminder.
Thank you for that reminder. And so with that, I'll open it up to council action. Mr. Pfeiffer.
I have a question still.
That's fine.
So on the criteria you're referring up, this is a PUD, right? So it's not a typical zoning, but there's still the criteria that was set forth on the PUD.
That is correct. There are criteria for all three of the agenda items that you have before you. There is criteria for the comp plan amendment, for the PUD development plan, and also for the plat approval. So though all three sets of those criteria would be included in the staff report on pages 7 through 9, so you'll be able to see those tables along with the staff reasoning there. But also, we can always take a few minutes to allow everyone to gather their thoughts and make some notes if that would be helpful.
That would be. I'd ask for that.
So we'll call for a 10 minutes?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, 10-minute recess for council to gather their thoughts.
Thank you.
advice related to the applicable criteria for our pending agenda items. That justification can be found under CRS 246402-4B, which authorizes the City Council to request and receive legal advice in executive session.
All right, so there's a motion to go into executive session with proper authorization through, as Ms. Morris has stated. So if you will cast your vote. Mr. Mayor, how do you vote?
I vote yes, but you'll have to figure out how to get me into the executive session.
That's fine. So, yeah, we will FaceTime you. So that passes 6-1 with Mr. Marriott in opposition. So we will go into executive session. We will be back as soon as possible. Thank you for that brief recess. We need a motion to come out of executive session.
I'd like to move to come out of executive session.
Motions to come out of executive session. Sorry. Mr. Mormon. All votes are cast. Mr. Mayor, how do you vote?
I vote to come out of executive session.
7-0. We are out of executive session. Again, thank you for allowing us to seek some legal advice. So again, I'll call the question of any council action. Mr. Marriott.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I'll move that CP 2022-002, a resolution by the Planning Commission for the City of Arvada, Colorado, to amend the 2014 Arvada Comprehensive Plan Land Use Designation pertaining to Candelas Filing Number 1, Amendment Number 4, from suburban residential to mixed-use residential emphasis, approximately located at 9367 McIntyre Street, be ratified. This motion is based on the findings of fact adopted by the Planning Commission. And I'll speak to it just quickly. This is changes that modifies the comprehensive plan, amends the comprehensive plan to allow the mixed use in this spot, which in spite of some of what we've heard tonight, I don't think anybody is necessarily against that, and I think that's probably the right outcome for here. So I will be voting yes because of that.
Thank you. All votes are cast. Let me display those. Mr. Mayor, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
That passes 7-0 with the mayor voting remotely. Mr. Marriott?
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. I move that the PUD development plan for Candelas Filing Number 1, Amendment Number 4, approximately located at 9367 McIntyre Street, be approved. This motion is based on findings of fact adopted by the Planning Commission. And I want to speak to this motion. So this is a real interesting situation and development to me. I think it points out the difficulty of these neighborhood retail and the reality, the current reality that we're in, that hadn't necessarily always been that way, but that the retail, the amenities that residents really want probably don't really stand on their own, that there's some way, somehow, they've got to be subsidized. And in this particular case, I think this developer has taken a way of doing that, and that's by using multifamily rental residential to kind of provide both customers and the ability for the retail to do better, but also provide actual monetary subsidy to make this happen. And it's a difficult situation because within the residents' vision, I think that they don't necessarily see that as necessarily their vision, but it seems like it's got to be done. There, you know, over the last 6 months, I've toured several different places, and there are places around where actually metro districts have taken this form. And it's an interesting other way of going about it, where the residents, the property owners, actually then own the amenity. When I look at this, I think that the developer has met all the criteria. I think I agree with the staff report, which is why I'm voting yes. It doesn't mean that in a perfect world maybe this could not have been different or better, and I think we can look at that. We could discuss that for a long time, but we have to judge what we have in front of us, and what we have in front of us, to my eyes, meets the criteria that's expressed in the staff report. So that's why I will be voting yes.
Mr. Pfeiffer.
Thank you. So I have concerns with this proposal for different reasons, but I mean, overall, the issue is the scale and the density of what you're proposing. We all talked about mixed use, and we referred to Five Parks many times before, of a small placemaking location. When you look at the operations and what you're trying to do there, and the vein in which we see mixed use, you know, retail, commercial down below, boutique shops with residential above. I think it over-densified the area, and the operations of it doesn't make sense to me because there's not been any good planning around even trash. Trash was, from my understanding and from my hearing testimony, was a last minute. So even operationally, you did not even think about one of the most fundamental things is trash removal for the health of that community. The scale, 45 feet, is your testimony. You're not saying you're going to do less, but you're doing 3 stories at 45 feet. That is what you've given us. You're taking 2-story houses and putting them at 35 feet. Those are very high ceilings that you say you may hit or may not hit. So from that perspective, in this criteria, number 7, I do not believe your proposed use is appropriate for location and design, and therefore I will not be supporting your proposal.
Ms. Simpson.
Thank you. So first, I'll commend the amount of design work that's got into this. This is a significantly better proposal than we saw 2 years ago, significantly. And my sentiments are that it's very, very close. I will be agreeing with Mr. Pfeiffer. I have concerns with the density, particularly around the townhomes, mostly those south side townhomes that do not have the 4 spaces of parking but have the 2. And this may be fine on the day-to-day basis where it's just, you know, the 2 primary owners of the units are there, but once they have a teenager, these are 2-bedroom, 2.5-bathroom units. Once they have friends over, when there's the Avalanche or in the Stanley Cup and they want to have friends over to watch, hopefully that we'll be lifting the cup again very soon. That's where my primary concerns and the people in the apartments, when they have their friends over. Apartments are often inhabited by younger people. They like to have friends over late. Where are those people going to be parking? They're going to be parking in that commercial, blocking out the restaurant customers. So I feel like we're very close. I don't feel like you have to throw the baby out with the bathwater for when you go back to envision this. Just a few of those little tweak designs, and I think we could be onto something. So I will be a no vote tonight, but I commend the work that has been done, and I think you're close.
Mr. Moorman.
Thank you. I would agree with Councilmember Simpson that you are very close, and I understand the challenges with doing mixed use at this location. I too will be a no vote, and my concerns are along the lines of the parking and especially as we look at those townhomes that don't have the driveways. There's no really good place for visitor parking, and that's going to creep over into the limited commercial and apartment complex parking. And so then it comes back to the safety issues around where that parking goes and how that impacts the residents that are going to be walking, biking, traveling to the bus stop and other amenities. So I too do not believe that, I believe that there are challenges with criteria number 7 and how this really impacts the scale and design of the characteristics around the area.
Ms. Smith.
Yes, I'd like to first, agree with Mr. Marriott and saying how challenging it can be to try to do this mixed development, but I also will be voting no, mainly on the traffic and parking impact based on scale.
Mr. Mayor.
Well, this is a tough one. My biggest issue, I think that, frankly, the applicant has addressed the issue of traffic. I think that their discussion in terms of how they want to activate the site, I think it's, frankly, by putting in the mixed use, it would reduce the concerns that are currently present in terms of the speed of the folks coming in on McIntyre, because once you do indeed get something built there and have on-street parking, the bump outs that they've done, I think that addresses to a large extent the traffic concern there. I also appreciate, frankly, that they've oriented this project to the north and that they are addressing the issue of making this more of a neighborhood establishment rather than trying to bring in people from the rest of Candelas. This is, you know, frankly, by having that north orientation, it makes it's more intimate, it's more, I think, intended. So I really like that. My biggest struggle is that 40 of the parking places to make this thing work are on driveway parking spots that are only on the northern units. That's the only thing, frankly, for me that causes me to agree that this should be that the motion made by Mr. Marriott should be denied. If they can come up with a way to either by reducing the density somewhat so that there is more of those, that you've got more parking available to more of the units. I think this passes the smell test, but for that reason, I'm compelled to vote no on this.
Thank you. And again, this is a tough one, and it's unfortunate that it's being compared to 5 parks because I don't think that 5 parks in this development are anywhere near what 5 parks is. But as I listened to the comments of the applicant and of the residents, I did have concerns about parking. I did have concerns about all the things that were talked about. But I think that by introducing the element of this mixed use, those are things that are going to be prevalent in any application that we might have. So therefore, I actually believe that the applicant did meet the requirements of the PUD, and so I will be voting yes. So with that, Mr. Mormon, if you could cast your vote. And that fails 5-2 for the PUD. So, Ms. Morris, we continue on with the plat.
I would do that. So I would go ahead and vote on the plat just to make sure that we have our record tied up.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Marriott.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that the preliminary plat for Candelas filing number 1, amendment number 4, approximately located at 9367 McIntyre Street be approved. This motion is based on the findings of fact adopted by the Planning Commission.
Mr. Mormon. Mr. Mayor, how do you vote?
I vote no.
And the plat filing fails 5-2. Thank you very much for all of your work tonight. We'll move on to our second public comment section. Is there anybody who signed up for a public comment on the second? Okay, I will close that. Do we have any council reports? Seeing none, Mr. Devon.
No reports, thank you.
Ms. Morris?
Nothing from me, Your Honor.
Thank you. Anything from you, Mr. Mayor?
No, I thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, for conducting the meeting. I do apologize that I was not there in person. This was a previously scheduled family vacation, but I felt it was important that I participate both for the public comment portion earlier in the evening, which is of course important to us, but more importantly, equally importantly for this public hearing, because it's I think the applicant deserved to have all 7 present. Frankly, if I had not participated, it simply would have been cast as a no vote. That may have been the same outcome, but to be fair to the applicant, it was important that I be part of it. I would urge that if the applicant can look at this hearing tonight and come up with something else that meets some of the needs. We are very close, and if we can indeed get this fast track to come back, I think that would be beneficial to everybody.
Thank you. And with that, we stand adjourned.